Chapter 24:16. On one side, Xue Leihan and Wu Qinfeng had already walked to one side and were talking telepathically. However, as the two of them talked, they seemed to have an argument. The speed of their conversation was obviously increasing, and the argument was also gradually escalating. Wu Qinfeng shook his head repeatedly, but Xue Leihan pressed on. In the end, Wu Qinfeng stuck out a finger awkwardly. Xue Leihan didn't back down and stuck out 5 fingers. Wu Qinfeng shook his head violently, so Xue Leihan bent down 1 finger and turned it into 4. Wu Qinfeng continued to shake his head, refusing to comply. Xue Leihan bent down another finger and turned it into 3. Mo Qinggu watched curiously and asked in a low voice, "What are they doing? Playing finger-guessing games?" As soon as she said that, Xue Qi and Chen Luyin staggered at the same time. Xue Leihan and Wu Qinfeng, who were playing finger-guessing games, also subconsciously looked over. Chu Yang almost sneered. 2 Dominator-level characters. How could they just play finger-guessing games when discussing matters? Mo Qing Wu's conjecture is indeed a little too outrageous, but Wu Qinfeng's expression was unusually miserable, looking like he was about to go crazy, but he still stubbornly stuck out 1 finger. Xue Leihan also seemed to be angry, but facing Wu Qinfeng's unyielding attitude, he had no choice but to bend down another finger, turning the number into 2. Wu Qinfeng was still shaking his head, still unwilling to give in. Xue Leihan was furious. He actually said loudly, "Wu Qinfeng, you have to give me face. When you were in charge of the dead souls in the heavenly continent, it was I who appointed you. Later on, when you competed for the title of World Master of the 10 Directions Underground, in order to let you win, the Eastern Royal Heavens spent countless manpower and resources. Why is it so difficult to ask you to do such a small thing now? You keep making excuses. Why don't you think about it? The Eastern Royal Heavens was obviously trying to repay his kindness. It seemed to be able to make Xue Leihan do this. Obviously, this matter had already exceeded the scope of what ordinary people could imagine. Wu Qinfeng's originally good expression completely turned bitter. He nodded helplessly. "All right, 2 it is." Xue Leihan snorted and said 3. Wu Qinfeng lowered his head dejectedly. "You might as well kill me." Xue Leihan laughed loudly. The rock-paper-scissors game had come to an end, but the situation on the other side was still in the ascendant. Chen Liuyun's beautiful eyes kept drifting towards Zi Xiecheng. There was a strange expression in his eyes that made people ponder over it. He seemed to be smiling, but not smiling. Zi Xiecheng, on the other hand, was looking at the sky with a look of indifference. Chen Luyun finally smiled and said, "This little sister looks very familiar. Where have we met before?" Zi Xiecheng said, "Humph." The meaning behind this voice was extremely complicated, and it contained a hint of hostility. However, Chen Luyun did not feel offended in the slightest. Instead, he chuckled. He said, "This voice is also very familiar. We must have seen it before." His tone was very certain. Zi Xiecheng was getting more and more unhappy. She shouted angrily, "What are you trying to say? What do you mean by familiar with this and that? Are you showing off how good your memory is?" Chen Luyun giggled and said, "The memory of that battle in the Black Blood Forest is still fresh in our minds. Lord Zi's power is really earth-shattering, but I've never thought that Lord Z is actually a woman, and such a beautiful and moving woman at that. Moreover," she laughed and said, "Furthermore, this jealousy, it's actually so big." Zi Xiecheng's face instantly turned red, and she was speechless for a long time. Actually, when Qinfeng and Chen Luyun appeared, Zi Xiecheng recognized their identities at first glance. However, she did not immediately go forward to acknowledge them. It was because of this awkward matter in between. During that battle, Zi Xiecheng had been shrouded in black fog from start to end, and did not reveal her true appearance at all. She originally thought that as long as she did not take the initiative to reveal this matter, Wu Qinfeng and his wife might not be able to see through her identity. Now that she was exposed by Qin Luyan, she could not help but blush. She said angrily, "I also did not expect that the two of you who lost me back then would be so different now. You actually became the Lord of the 10 Directions world in the Heaven Imperial Court. It is only right that I look up to the two of you." Chen Luyan laughed and walked forward, not caring about Zi Xieching's cold face. He directly held her hand and said gently, "The reason why the two of us are where we are today is all thanks to that battle back then. It was after that battle that the two of us realized something, and that was why His Majesty the East Emperor looked for us. Finally, we became the lords of the Heaven Imperial Court today. To be honest, besides His Majesty the East Emperor, we also have to thank you, Lord Zi, for being where we are today." Zi Xieching forced a smile and said, "Both of you have really improved your cultivation during this period of time. How can I dare to accept the title of Lord Zi now?" Chen Luyan smiled bitterly and shook his head. "There is no lack of resources for cultivation underground. Furthermore, we have such an identity now that we can absorb the spiritual energy of souls from all directions. That is why we can improve so quickly. However, such a cultivation process is not worth mentioning." It was obvious that there were still areas that weren't satisfactory. This bitterness was something that couldn't be told to outsiders. Chun Luyan looked at Zi Xieching with sincerity, and actually looked at her with some envy. He said, "However, although Lord Zi did not improve very quickly during this period of time, you no longer have the original demonic aura in you. From now on, you have embarked on a bright and smooth path to the Supreme Tao. That is truly something worth celebrating." Upon hearing that, Zi Xieching subconsciously let out a long breath. She also smiled bitterly and said with some lingering fear, "This process is just as you said. It is not worth mentioning." Chen Luyan blinked his beautiful eyes in understanding. Suddenly he leaned close to Zi Xieching's ear and asked softly, "But I wonder, what is the relationship between Lord Zi and the Heavenly Emperor of Zi Shao then?" Upon hearing this, Zi Xieching could not help but widen her eyes in astonishment. She was stunned for a moment and did not know what to say. After a while she said, "Your question is a little strange. How can I have any relationship with the Heavenly Emperor of Zi Shao? The Heavenly Emperor of Zi Shao fell 1,000,000 years ago, and but from this 1,000,000 years there is still an unreachable distance." She paused and said, "Taking a step back, the world I was originally in was actually not this world of the Heavenly Imperial Court. Between the two of us, there is really no way we can fight, right?" Chen Luyan looked at Zi Xieching's face and saw that her face was full of doubts. Obviously, these doubts came from the bottom of her heart, and there was no element of pretense. He could not help but be stunned and said, "This is it not?" Wu Qinfeng walked over at the right time and said, "Let's go." He turned and said to Shuai Leihan, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will not forget about that matter." Shuai Leihan nodded lightly. Wu Qinfeng and his wife greeted Chu Yang. Wu Qinfeng smiled and said, "Sword Master, don't forget the Heavenly Imperial Court, the Lake of Despair." Then the husband and wife rose with the wind and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even after they left, they did not forget to remind Chu Yang again. Could it be that there was really some secret? Shuai Leihan smiled bitterly. "This guy is still biased towards you. I originally did not intend to reveal the secret so early." Chu Yang asked doubtfully, "Secret? What secret?" Shuai Leihan smiled. "You will know when you get there. Even if I explain it now, without the actual thing in front of me, what's the point?" Chu Yang was stunned. What was going on? Did they have to be so mysterious? Why were they trying to be so mysterious? Zi Xieching frowned and asked Chu Yang, "That secret can only be revealed when we return to the lower realm. Thinking too much about it now will only create more trouble for ourselves. But I don't understand why that supreme martial artist Luyin would actually ask me about my relationship with the heavenly emperor of the purple clouds. His Majesty and I did not know each other at all. When he died, I probably had not reincarnated yet. We were separated by so many years. How could there be any relationship? This is simply inexplicable. It makes me so flustered. I really don't know what to say. As Zi Xieching spoke, there was an inexplicable smile on her face. Obviously, in her opinion, this matter that Qin Luyin was talking about was an extremely ridiculous matter. If supreme martial artist Luyin still had some sense in his mind, he would not say such retarded words. But she just had to say it. If that was not retarded, then what was? Even the stupidest person would be able to know that two people who were separated by hundreds of thousands of years, especially one who was born hundreds of thousands of years after the other had died. It was absolutely impossible for there to be any relationship between these two people. But when Zi Xieching said this, Donghuang Shueleihan was actually unexpectedly stunned. Donghuang Xieching originally had his back facing Zi Xieching and was about to say something to Chu Yang. But at this moment, everyone felt that this Donghuang Xieching's entire body suddenly stiffened, as if something unbelievable had happened to him. He stood stiffly in front of Chu Yang just like that. After a long time, he suddenly turned around. Because his neck turned too abruptly, it made a kacha sound. Very strangely, he came in front of Zi Xieching. His pair of eyes stared at Zi Xieching's face carefully. He looked so attentively and carefully. Slowly, this Donghuang Xieching's eyes actually turned a little red. He carefully looked at Zi Xieching's eyes, eyebrows, face, nose, lips, and chin. The more he looked, the more agitated he became. Finally, he actually clapped his hands fiercely. Chu Yang was stunned. But he saw that Shueleihan's eyes were still focused, but his lips were trembling. After a long time, he finally asked, "Miss Ziyu, where did you come from in the past?" When he asked this question, there was a deep sense of disbelief in the depths of Shueleihan's eyes. There was also a little bit of unbelievable joy that was slowly rising. This little bit of joy seemed to have added a lot of vitality to his body. Chapter 24:17. Zi Xieching smiled faintly. "Does your Majesty Donghuang also have such doubts? What's wrong with the heavens? Haha." If the person in front of her was not Donghuang Shueleihan, Zi Xieching even wanted to laugh at him. What kind of thoughts and logic did these people have? Did they have any brains at all? Even an idiot would know that this was impossible, right? "Answer me. Where did you come from? Answer me." Shueleihan asked persistently. His voice was actually a little anxious. "I don't belong to this Heaven Imperial Court world, nor am I a native of this Heaven Imperial Court world." Zi Xieching was helpless. She said concisely, "My hometown is a world that has now been destroyed. It's extremely far away from here. As for how far, it's hard to describe with numbers. Also, I'm not a human, but a demon. The reason why I can transform into a human is because..." Shueleihan interrupted her. "What I want to know is not these. These are all not important. What I want to know is, where did you come from?" Zi Xieching couldn't help but be stunned. Her expression was extremely strange. It was no wonder that Zi Xieching was so surprised. In her mind, she had clearly explained her origins just now. Why would Donghuang still ask her where she came from? Could it be that this Lord Donghuang's brain was flooded with water? Otherwise, why couldn't he even get the main point of question? He kept asking. Shueleihan didn't seem to be surprised by Zi Xieching's surprised expression. He took a deep breath again and closed his eyes, as if to calm his emotions. Then he said, "Miss Zi, can you tell me in detail about your past? As much as possible." He looked at Zi Xieching, who was still in shock, as if he did not know where to start. He laughed bitterly and said, "Miss Zi, you may not know this, but with my current cultivation and the ability to calculate, I'm very good at it. Although I may not be able to see through every detail, but it's roughly the same. But for you, I can't see through you at all. It seems that there's a very special thing on your body. It blocks all the prying eyes from the outside world." "Oh, I see," Zi Xieching said thoughtfully. "Well, after hearing Donghuang's words, I do remember some things. In the past, I did find some strange things about me, but I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know the whole story. Also, it never affected his body, so there was no need to pay attention to it anymore. It was only when His Majesty Donghuang mentioned it that I suddenly remembered." Shui Leihan said solemnly, "Miss Z, I want to know about your past. All of your past." He pondered for a while and said, "To me, this is perhaps very, very important. So, I understand." Zi Xieching smiled sweetly. "There's nothing unspeakable about my past. It's fine to talk about it." Shui Leihan smiled and nodded. "If that's the case, please tell me, Miss Z. I'm all ears." At this moment, the way Shui Leihan looked at Zi Xieching was full of love. He was like a strict father who saw his naughty daughter. Although his daughter had run away from home for a long time because of her mischievous behavior, the loving father's heart was still full of love for her. Or perhaps it was pity, endless pity. In her heart, she was only worried about how much her daughter had suffered outside and would no longer remember her daughter's disobedience. As long as his daughter returned safely, nothing else mattered. That experience was really too long ago, so long that I've forgotten a lot. I only remember now that that place was called the Misty Continent. Zi Xieching was silent for a while. She sorted out her thoughts and tried hard to recall. She said softly, "I was born there. At that time, I was just an ordinary white ferret. Actually, I didn't know who my parents were, because ever since I was born, I was lonely. I was born alone in an ice-cold cave. Beside me was a pile of food. Those food didn't seem to rot. Luckily, with these food, I didn't starve to death. Then, one day, after I was full again, I rummaged through the pile of food on a whim and found the innermost part. Surprisingly, I found a lot of fruits. Well, I don't know who put those fruits there. Starting from eating a strange fruit, I realized that my strength had increased. It had become very, very strong. Then, I tried to walk out of the cave. In the following period of time, I realized that I was actually very strong. At least among my own kind, I was already invincible. Next, I discovered that the memory of a cultivation method suddenly appeared in my mind. I began to cultivate according to that cultivation method. As I cultivated, I ate those fruits. My progress was quite fast. I don't know if it's because I'm very talented or because of those fruits. But in any case, my progress was very fast. There was deep emotion in Zi Xieching's eyes. My home was just an ice-cold cave. But to me, it was filled with infinite warmth. I don't know who prepared all these for me, but I know that it must be my family. Only they would care so much for me. After a long, long time, my strength was already invincible in that mountainous area. I belonged to the top existence. I realized that although I was just a small white marten, the wolves, tigers, and leopards in the mountain, including some mountain spirits and wood monsters, were no longer my match. In other words, to me, not only were they no longer a threat, they were also meaningless. Without a goal, I was bored to death and wanted to go out and take a look. After I went out, I realized that in that world I was still an almost invincible existence. Just like that, I wandered the world. Sometimes I would cause trouble. When a monster like me appeared in the human Jianghu, of course, people would gang up on me and attack me. After fighting for hundreds of years, although I was strong, I would still be injured. Sometimes a person's strength is limited, and so is a demon's strength. When I was injured, I would return to the cave to recuperate. Then, I found out that only I could enter the cave. Even the top expert of that world couldn't take a single step into the cave. Regardless of whether it was water, fire, or smoke, all methods were useless. To put it in a more exaggerated way, it was invulnerable to all methods. After that, with a considerable improvement in my strength, I was really invincible in that world. Gradually, no one and no force could do anything to me. But I felt tired of it. Perhaps it's the saying that being invincible is the loneliest. At this point, Shualehan interrupted her and said, Miss Z, do you know how far that world is from the Heaven Imperial Court? Zi Xieching thought about it seriously. Then she shook her head in confusion. I don't know, I really don't know. It's a distance that can't be described with specific numbers. It's really too far. Shualehan nodded and didn't interrupt her. He listened to her continue. When I was sure that I was invincible and had no opponents, I wandered around. But by chance, I discovered that there were still some very powerful hidden experts in that world. So I had opponents again and started to fight with those hidden experts. Another few hundred years passed like this. After defeating all those people, I found that I had reached a rather high level. It was also at that time that the heavens suddenly released killing intent. That world encountered a completely irresistible natural disaster. The entire world was completely destroyed in an extremely short period of time. Countless meteorites fell from the sky and smashed the entire world. Back then, I thought that I was already invincible in the world, but in the face of such a natural disaster, I had no power to resist at all. At this point, there was a heartfelt fear in the depths of Zi Xieching's eyes. Everyone in the whole world was in a state of panic and despair, including me. I tried to resist, but knew that I couldn't, so I could only wait for the arrival of death. But at this moment, a big hand suddenly descended from the sky and grabbed me. Then I flew up to the sky with that big hand. When I looked down, I realized that the world I was in was already torn apart, full of holes and devastation. The next moment, the whole world became pieces of debris and transformed into new meteorites or shooting stars in the sky, gradually disappearing from this world. Then I found out some things that I couldn't understand at all. The world I was in was actually just a big rock suspended in the sky. When this big rock broke apart due to some irresistible factors, most of the remaining rock fragments would become shooting stars. There were so many shooting stars in the sky, and they were so beautiful. But before that, no one knew that those shooting stars were actually a continent like the world we lived in, born due to destruction. What's more, no one knew that those beautiful shooting stars symbolized the death of countless lives every moment. The meaning behind those beautiful shooting stars was actually death. Moreover, it was the death of billions and billions of lives. Zi Xieching said, that was the realization I had at that moment, a realization that I've never forgotten. Shualehan's eyes continued to show heartfelt pity. He sighed softly but didn't interrupt Zi Xieching's narration. He continued to listen quietly. Mo Qinggu, who was also listening, subconsciously moved closer to Zi Xieching. She hugged Zi Xieching's arm and looked at her silently. Zi Xieching smiled comfortingly and hugged Mo Qingwu's arm tightly as well. Then she continued slowly. After that world was destroyed, I was brought to another strange place by that unknown hand. It was a world full of vitality, full of spiritual flowers and strange plants. But there were no living creatures in that world. No, it should be said that there were no human beings. Chapter 24:18. How could there be so many heavenly treasures? It was a huge world that was most suitable for humans to live in, but there was no life at all. I have to say that this was a very strange thing. However, at that time, I was limited by my own experience and didn't realize this point. To me at that time, no one was competing with me for those heavenly treasures. It was a great thing that I couldn't ask for. Countless heavenly treasures could only be enjoyed by me alone. Therefore, my strength improved by leaps and bounds in that new world. Almost every day I was improving. It's not an exaggeration to say that my improvement at that time was rapid. At this point, Shualehan suddenly asked, "What about the person who saved you? Do you still remember what he looked like?" "I don't know. Or rather, I don't know how to describe it." Zi Xieching smiled bitterly and said, "If I must describe him, it's only his black clothes and his extreme coldness. Next, it's only that tyrannical power that could destroy heaven and earth. It was as if he could destroy a world instantly with just one look." Although I've seen him before and can recognize him if I see him again in the future, if you ask me to describe his appearance, I really can't." She looked at Xue Leihan and smiled apologetically. She said, "Your Majesty, although your cultivation has reached the peak of this world and my strength is not enough to make any judgment about you, I really think that you're still very far away from that person. There's an unreachable distance, just like the distance between the world I was born in and this heavenly imperial court. Perhaps just one look from that person is enough to make you unable to withstand it." These words were rather blunt. Although Zi Xieching had tried her best to be tactful, the meaning behind her words was clear. "Xue Leihan, don't think that you're quite impressive in this heavenly imperial court. Compared to that expert, I know you're nothing. You can't even compare to a strand of hair." Unexpectedly, Xue Leihan didn't feel offended at all. Instead, he laughed out loud. He shook his head and said, "That kind of person in this whole universe, I don't know if there's a handful of them. I'm quite satisfied to be able to compete with him. If he's willing to kill me with just one look, it might be my honor." His tone right now, he was completely like a tolerant and gentle father who was coaxing his naughty little daughter. Zi Xieching chuckled and said, "Anyway, that person is an ultimate expert who has completely exceeded my understanding of his abilities. After he sent me to that world he left on his own, I tore a piece of black cloth from his sleeve and tied it around my neck. In the end, that piece of cloth actually became my strongest weapon. In any case, no weapon has ever been able to cut through my cloth belt. No, not to mention being cut off. There was not even the slightest bit of injury. It's as if it's an indestructible, supreme, divine object. No matter who it's facing, it can still fight." As she spoke, a black strip of cloth appeared in her hand. It was about 3 feet long and was only as wide as a palm. She held it in her hand, and it was no different from an ordinary strip of cloth. There was nothing special about it at all. However, as Zi Xieching injected her cultivation into it, the strip of cloth actually continued to extend, as if it could extend endlessly. At this moment, the cloth belt. It was like a black cloud that filled the entire world and covered the sun. Xue Leihan's calm and gentle eyes finally couldn't help but tremble. Xue Qi's face turned pale. It's just a piece of cloth that person tore off casually from his own robe. And it's actually such a heaven-defying divine object? Xue Qi didn't believe it and stretched out her hand to tear it. However, she realized that even though she had already used all her strength, this piece of cloth was still completely unaffected. Xue Qi couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. She really felt a trace of fear that came from the bottom of her heart. Zi Xieching smiled and said, "Until I've passed through countless planes, until now, this piece of cloth is still intact. Perhaps, even if it's the end of the world, even if the world doesn't exist anymore, this piece of cloth will still be natural. In that strange world, I succeeded in my cultivation and was able to transform into a human. When I was going through the tribulation of transformation, it was this piece of cloth that protected me and prevented me from turning into ashes. And here, when I decided to shed my demon form and completely transform into a human, it was also this piece of cloth that protected me and completed the whole process of transforming into a heavenly demon. If it wasn't for the protection of this piece of cloth, I'm afraid that I would have died countless times. So when I had the ability to cross the void, I wanted to find my benefactor." Zi Xieching said softly, "Not for anything else, but to personally say thank you to him. With his cultivation, perhaps if I want to repay his kindness, it's just a simple thank you." After that, I searched for countless planes, as if I was being deliberately guided. I experienced many worlds, and also experienced countless battles and dangers. Finally, I arrived at the Heavenly Imperial Court. At that time, after staying in the Heavenly Imperial Court for a period of time, I realized that I had the feeling again, so I set off again. In the end, I finally arrived at the Heavenly Imperial Court. To me, it was just an inconspicuous plane, But it was in that plane that I accidentally encountered space turbulence and thus lost most of my strength. And the most ridiculous thing was that my benefactor's aura had always been guiding me. After guiding me to the heavenly imperial court, it completely disappeared. I couldn't feel anything anymore. And then it was the experience until now. Zi Xieching's beautiful eyes were filled with deep doubts. I never understood why my final destination was actually there. Xue Leihan was silent for a long time. He thought of the two people he had met that day. One was in black, the other in white. The person in white created the Calamity Sword. And could the person Zi Xieching met be the one in black? Thinking of this, Xue Leihan asked a question. I roughly understand. Miss Zi, since you don't have parents and don't know your background, then why is your surname Zi? Zhang, Wang, Li, Zhao, why did you choose to be Zi? Xue Leihan asked. Did you give yourself this name, or did your benefactor give it to you? Zi Xieching was stunned. After a while, she said, I don't know. I've been wearing purple since I was young. Of course, this isn't the main reason. It's because, since I was born, I had a feeling that my surname should be Zi. Xue Leihan looked at Zi Xieching with some relief and let out a long, long sigh. As if he was relieved of something, he smiled and said, Little girl, if I'm not wrong, you were actually born from an egg, right? Chu Yang's mouth twitched. He thought to himself that this Emperor Donghuang seemed to have lost his mind. A ferret was not a chicken, a duck, or goose. How could there be a ferret that was born from an egg? Xue Qi pursed her lips and squinted her eyes. Big brother, you're muddle-headed. Don't be surnamed Xue in the future. Your surname is Hu. You're not afraid of embarrassing the Xue family, but I am. Xue Leihan didn't even blink. He shouted, If you don't shut up, you can get lost. Xue Qi pursed her lips and muttered, You only know how to show off your power to me. But she shrank her neck and stood aside, not daring to speak any more. Zi Xieching's eyes widened. She looked at Xue Leihan with some surprise and said, How did you know? Our ferret clan has never had a case of being born from an egg, but I'm a special case, so I've never told anyone about it. Xue Leihan smiled in relief, laughing to his heart's content. As he laughed, tears suddenly welled up in his eyes. He stood up and suddenly let out a sorrowful howl. His voice rolled out as if he was venting the pain of 1,000,000 years in his howl. He looked at the sky and murmured, Brother, you've left a trace of your bloodline in the end. There's still a bit of your continuation in this world. After saying this, he suddenly burst into tears of joy and sorrow. Tears flowed down profusely. Xue Qi stood up with a swoosh. Her expression was also very sad. Looking at the crying Xue Leihan, she murmured sadly, When the heavenly emperor of purple clouds, Zi Hao, died in battle, Big Brother only shed tears, but he didn't cry out loud. He hasn't cried for at least 1,000,000 years. What's wrong with him today? However, the smart Chu Yang vaguely realized something. His expression was solemn. When he looked at Zi Xieching again, his gaze also gradually became a little strange. That was respect, surprise, and a little admiration. These feelings had nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman. Instead, it was because of a loyal soul from 1,000,000 years ago. At this moment, the Lord of the Eastern Royal Heavens, the majesty, dignity, and poise of a ruler of a generation were all gone. As if he had gone crazy, he first burst into tears, inexplicably sorrowful. Then he laughed loudly, as if he was extremely happy. His laughter pierced through the clouds and split the sky. No one would have thought that this person who was crying and laughing like a madman was actually the current ruler of the Eastern Royal Heavens. Donghuang Xue Leihan. Zi Xieching was completely stunned by the scene in front of her. Her face turned white and red. Suddenly she shouted, You've all got it wrong. There must be a mistake. I have nothing to do with the heavenly emperor of purple clouds. From head to toe, inside and out, we have nothing to do with each other. Xue Leihan laughed and said, No, You have something to do with each other. You have a great relationship with Zihao, an inseparable relationship. Back then, Zihao had a close female friend who was from the demon clan. Her origin was from the soul-devouring Marten clan. However, although this kind of strange clan had a long life, their reproduction ability was extremely weak. Back then, this demon lady was hailed as one of the 3 great beauties of the demon emperor heavens. Chapter 2419. Xue Leihan smiled and said, Soul-devouring Marten is the original name of the demon race, so it's not well known. In the Heavenly Imperial Court, it's mostly known as Purple Marten, Purple Divine Marten, Celestial Marten, and so on. There are many names, but there aren't many who truly understand this kind of race. This is because they do not look any different from ordinary Marten species. Although they have an unusually long lifespan, their bodies are extremely weak, even weaker than ordinary Marten species. However, their intelligence far surpasses that of ordinary demon clan members, and they are practically the top of the demon clan. Besides, there's another difference between this kind of soul-devouring Marten and the ordinary Marten race. When the soul-devouring Marten is born, it's not a fetus but an egg. Xue Leihan smiled lightly and said, Back then, Zihao and that demon girl were entangled in love and hatred, fighting each other for thousands of years. But no one would have thought that the 2 of them would actually become a pair of close friends and quarrelsome lovers. It is said that when Zihao was in danger, the demon clan lady rushed to his side from thousands of miles away. She broke through layers and layers of blockades. In the end, when Zi Shaotian fell, she was still by his side and died in battle before Zihao. Xue Leihan let out a long sigh as he looked up at the sky. They've never stayed together for long periods of time like ordinary couples. They've always been apart more than together, meeting and parting in haste. However, in times of danger, they rushed over from hundreds of thousands of miles away to die together with you and walk through the spring together. Emo Qingwu's heart trembled. She asked longingly, May I know the name of the senior from the Marten race? Xue Leihan's gaze was a little distant. He answered softly, Her name is Ling Piaoping. People call her Goddess Piaoping. Goddess Piaoping. Emo Qingwu and Zi Xieching murmured at the same time. Rin Pingting, a duckweed in the martial world who can overturn rivers and seas. Her heart can move heaven and earth, and her Piaoping sword can frighten gods and ghosts. Xue Leihan said coldly, Ling Piaoping was not only one of the 3 great beauties of the Demon Emperor Heaven. She was also the 3rd expert of the Demon Emperor Heaven, second only to the Demon Emperor and Demon Empress. Ling Piaoping. Emo Qingwu said softly, for the Heavenly Emperor of Zishao to have such a confidant and a companion in the afterlife, his life can be considered to have not been in vain. As she spoke, her bright eyes looked at Chu Yang's face, and she smiled brightly. Chu Yang's heart. Then he smiled in response. This gaze seemed to convey a clear message. If one day you are also at the end of your road like Zi Hao, I will also die with you like this senior Ling Piaoping. Side by side on the path of the sun, hand in hand on the path to the netherworld. At this moment, Zi Xieching felt an indescribable sense of dizziness. Ling Piaoping. The moment that name appeared, she felt an intense pain that came from the depths of her soul. She furrowed her brows tightly and said, The difference between us is close to 1,000,000 years. Is it possible? Is it possible? His tone was full of doubt. However, she could vaguely sense that there seemed to be a purple-clothed man in a wide robe with wide sleeves. He had the sun and moon on his shoulders and the stars on his body. His wide shoulders seemed to be able to support the world. That gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the past and present. It was filled with dignity and kindness. He had a dignified and righteous aura, an upright and awe-inspiring aura, an unyielding and lofty character, and an aura of a sovereign descending upon the world. Beside this purple-clothed man, there was a slender and delicate woman in white. Her features were picturesque, and she was a feast for the eyes. She snuggled up to the purple-clothed man like a little bird. Her watery eyes seemed to be able to pierce through time and space and watch her affectionately. That gaze was filled with love, longing, and heartfelt reluctance. Who were this man and woman? The man had a heroic bearing and an unparalleled dignity. However, he did not exist in her memory. As for the beautiful woman, she gave her an indescribable sense of familiarity and closeness. It was as if she had seen her every moment before. However, she was a weak woman. When had she ever seen her? Zi Xieching suddenly felt that something in the depths of her soul had suddenly broken. It was as if a seal that had existed for a long time had cracked open without any warning. An indescribable feeling of sadness suddenly welled up in her heart. Xue Leihan carefully observed Zi Xieching's expression from the side. He said slowly, "As long as an oviparous soul-devouring ferret lays an egg, it will imprint its own soul mark into the egg to give birth to its offspring. Moreover, she can set the birth time of her offspring. Either she can entrust it to someone else, or she can meet someone else." Xue Leihan said softly, "All in all, it's not a very difficult thing to let her offspring hatch after a long period of time. Of course, the difficulty of hundreds of thousands of years in between is indeed a little high, but as long as she has the corresponding heavenly treasure in that strange cave, especially with the help of that mysterious man in black, then everything is not a problem at all. It's just that, what right does she have to be able to ask that person to help her? After that, as the offspring slowly grow up, as the seals on those souls are unlocked, and they come into contact with the inherited skills of their clan, as well as the life experiences of their mother, they use this method to guide their offspring so that they won't go astray. This is a kind of inheritance of the clan soul. Of course, this is also a kind of preparation for a rainy day, because living in such a world where the weak are prey to the strong, they can't guarantee that they will die one day, and they will usually make arrangements for their offspring before they die. This is their nature. It's also the same kind of love that all mothers have for their children. Your current cultivation probably hasn't reached the level that Ling Piaoping reached back then. So, there are some things that you still don't know. And that's also a kind of protection for you. They don't want you to know things that will make you worry too early. Xue Leihan said softly, "So, for you to know these things today, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for you. The main reason is because of me. Today, I've really been too agitated." Xue Leihan sighed deeply. Zi Xieching's plump lips trembled a little. She said, "That senior Ling Piaoping, what was the martial technique that she was best at in her life?" Xue Leihan's eyes were fixed on her. He said softly, "Ling Piaoping's most famous divine technique was a divine technique that belonged exclusively to her. She named it Heavenly Song and Graceful Dance. At that time, it was among the experts of our generation. There was no one who didn't dream of this heavenly song and graceful dance. Heavenly song and graceful dance. In a dreamy and beautiful scene, it allows one to die contentedly, with a satisfied and happy face even in death. This is the most magical part of the heavenly song and graceful dance technique. This technique is somewhat similar to Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower. However, viburnum flower is still a hidden weapon at the end of the day. Heavenly song and graceful dance is a completely different kind of technique in terms of its origin and attribute." Xue Leihan explained in detail. Zi Xieching seemed to be relieved. She said, "I don't know about this. I've never dabbled in it before." Xue Leihan said slowly, "Don't be so anxious. I haven't finished my words." Later on, after Ling Piaoping's name shook the world, the people of the world felt that it was a little disrespectful to add the words heavenly song and graceful dance to this beautiful woman. Therefore, they named her Heavenly Song and Graceful Dance Divine Technique. It was respectfully called Tianwu. Xue Leihan said word by word. Then he turned to look at Emo Qingguo and said softly, "This technique has been extinct in the world for a long time. It's just that not long ago, it actually reappeared in Qingguo. I think it should be you who imparted it to her? Mo Chinguo was suddenly stunned, and on the other side, Chu Yang leaped and caught Zi Xieching in his arms. Because the moment the 3 words Tianwu came out of his mouth, Zi Xieching's delicate body trembled and she actually fell backward softly. She had actually fainted. Everyone was in a flurry and tried to save her. With Zi Xieching's current cultivation, it could be said that she had completely reached a profound level where even if a mountain collapsed in front of her, her countenance would not change. At this moment, to actually be able to shock her to the point of fainting with just one sentence, it could be seen how big of a shock these few words had on her. After a long time, Zi Xieching woke up in Chu Yang's arms. Her face was ghastly pale and her eyes were lifeless, almost as if she was seriously ill. Xue Leihan leaned in front of her face, his face full of concern. "Girl, how are you? Are you feeling better?" That unusual sense of urgency was clearly expressed. There was also a hint of caution in it. For such a situation to happen to Dong Huang, not only was it strange, it was simply unprecedented. "I want to hear you finish telling this story," Zi Xieching said softly. "This." Xue Leihan was a little hesitant. He said, "You're not feeling well now. Why don't we rest for a night and continue tomorrow?" "No need," Zi Xieching said firmly. "I want to hear it now." Xue Leihan smiled bitterly and looked at Chu Yang helplessly, obviously hoping that Chu Yang would help to persuade her. Now only Chu Yang had this side. Chu Yang spread out his hands. "Don't look at me. What can I do? This is all your own trouble. I can't help you. Besides, you've already provoked my wife to such a state. It's already very brotherly of me not to settle the score with you. Don't be greedy and want me to persuade you." Chu Yang thought to himself, "If I listen to you and dissuade you at this time, I reckon I won't be able to live in the future." Xue Leihan was momentarily stunned. He sighed, helplessly, not knowing whether he was lamenting that he had made a bad friend or something else. He frowned and really couldn't make up his mind. He didn't know whether he should tell her or not. Zi Xieching snuggled in Chu Yang's arms, her expression extremely delicate. In Chu Yang's impression, Zi Xieching had always been strong and unyielding. It was undoubtedly the first time that he had seen her display such weakness and helplessness. But at this moment, if Zi Xieching could see herself, she would suddenly realize that her current appearance was extremely similar to the woman she had vaguely felt. Even her current expression and face were the same. Somehow, there seemed to be a man in purple in a loose robe with the sun and moon on his shoulders and the stars on his body. His broad shoulders seemed to be supporting the heaven and earth. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the past and present, looking at her just like that. Beside this man in purple, there was a slim and delicate woman in white. Her features were picturesque. She snuggled softly beside him and looked at him affectionately. Chapter 24:20. Seeing that Xue Leihan had actually stopped talking, Zi Xieching leaned into Chu Yang's arms and suddenly smiled sadly. She recited softly, "Heavenly dance, dance of the heavens. The first dance is a dance of heaven and earth. The second dance is a dance of darkness and darkness. The third dance is a dance of the cold moon. The fourth dance moves the power of the universe. The fifth dance moves the vicissitudes of life and death. The seventh dance moves the heavens. Heavenly dance, the first dance moves the heavens." Xue Leihan's lips trembled as he listened to Zi Xieching's soft recitation. His eyes were blank and his face was even more gloomy as he sighed continuously. Is this the heavenly dance? Martial technique formula? Zi Xieching's limpid eyes stared intently at Xue Leihan's face. But when she asked this question, she paused a few times. She was even a little out of breath. It could be seen how agitated Zi Xieching was when she asked this question. Xue Leihan's eyes also flashed with extremely complicated emotions. He said softly, "That's right. This is the heavenly dance. Martial technique formula. Zi Xieching let out a soft moan and almost fainted again. She smiled bleakly and said weakly, "No wonder." There were a few tables and some furniture in that cave. They were all made of top-grade star iron and 7-star sandalwood. However, after I was born, when I learned how to distinguish them, I found that they were all rusty. Some of them had even completely decayed and turned into powder. I didn't know that at that time. I didn't know that those things had already proved that my identity was not ordinary. Could it be that from the time I was placed in that cave until I was born, hundreds of thousands of years had already passed? That's right, if not for the erosion of countless years. How could such things have decayed? Zi Xieching muttered to herself unconsciously. It seemed like she was also asking a question, but she didn't know who she was asking. It also seemed like she was answering her own question. The answer was already clear in her heart. Xue Leihan didn't know how to respond to the person in front of him. He could only let out a long sigh. That's right, beside me. There were also many other things. But when I was born, those things had long been indistinguishable from what they were originally. After so many years, what can last forever? Zi Xieching smiled bitterly. Chu Yang could clearly feel it. At this moment, Zi Xieching was just like a helpless child. She was all alone, walking in this vast world with no one to rely on. Chu Yang thought for a moment. He put more strength into his arms and hugged her even tighter in his arms. He used his body heat and strength to tell her, "You are not alone." Now and in the future he would never be lonely. You still have me. Leaning against Chu Yang's thick chest, Zi Xieching seemed to feel a sense of solid support. She couldn't help but shrink deeper into his embrace. Her delicate body actually trembled a little. He was speechless for a while. Zi Xieching sighed softly and said softly, "I originally thought that I had no parents and was born and raised by the heavens. Just like that, I was left alone in this world, with no one to care for me, no one to love me, and no one to rely on, and no identity or background. So, every time I see other children acting coquettishly in their mother's arms, holding their father's hand and jumping around, I can only be envious. There was one time, when I was slaughtering a tiger tribe, I saw a tiger using its own body to protect a newborn tiger cub. When it couldn't resist, it simply used its own body to receive my attack. It would rather be killed by me. When it didn't let me hurt the cub, I suddenly felt a heartfelt envy and let them go. That day after I left, I secretly returned and hid in a dark place. I enviously looked at the cub nestled in the arms of the big tiger, moaning with concern and licking each other's wounds with their tongues. At that time, I even wished that I wasn't that strong person who could exterminate a tribe with a wave of his hand, but that well-protected cub. 2 drops of tears silently fell from Zi Xieching's eyes. But such a thing will never happen to me. I will also never be able to experience that feeling. I've finally gotten used to being alone. I've gotten used to facing the storm with my bare hands. I've also gotten used to struggling on my own. When there's a strong enemy, I'll struggle to escape. When I'm happy, I'll drink alone under the moon. When I'm in pain, I'll find a place where no one else is around to comfort myself. When I'm weak, I'll constantly tell myself that in this world, there's no one other than myself who can help me, and no one is willing to help me, because they're not my family and they're definitely not my parents. Zi Xieching's voice gradually became agitated, but it was still mixed with a trace of sobbing. Originally, I was already used to all of this, but now I unexpectedly found out that I actually might have parents, and my parents were such peerless heroes who had great power over the world and ruled over the heavens. Zi Xieching said painfully, this feeling, before I had the time to rejoice, the cruel reality had already told me. If I were their child, I would still be an orphan, still without any relatives or friends, still all alone in this world, because they had already died millions of years ago. Ha ha ha! Zi Xieching smiled bitterly, the tears on her face flowing freely. Such a thing, to me, is so cruel. My lifelong wish is to cry in my mother's arms and act coquettishly, and then hear my father say to me, "No matter what trouble you have caused, Daddy will cover for you." Such a thing, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just a sentence, I'll be satisfied. But in my life, there will never be such a time again. It turns out that I'm destined to have no one to depend on in my life. Seeing Zi Xieching like this, Chu Yang's heart ached. He hugged her tightly and said softly, "No, no, you won't have no one to depend on in your life. You still have me. No matter what trouble you have caused, I will cover for you forever." Mo Qinggu held Zi Xieching's hand tightly and comforted her with tears in her eyes. "Sister Zi, you still have me." At the side, Shuai Leihan said softly, but he said firmly, "Yes, girl, you still have me. As long as you are willing, I will be your father. Girl, no matter whether you are willing or not, no matter what trouble you have caused, I will cover for you, even if you want the sky to collapse." Shuai Leihan raised his head to look the dusky sky and said softly, yet resolutely, As long as you are willing this night, whether it was for Zi Xieching or for Chu Yang, whether it was Chu Yang or Shuai Leihan, it was a night of great significance and worth remembering for the rest of their lives. Shuai Leihan was emotional. He thought that his brother had left the mortal world just like that, vanishing into thin air and leaving no trace in the mortal world. But he never dreamed that there was still a bloodline left behind. It was only after more than 1,000,000 years that he could see it. Who said that the heavens were heartless? Who said that the heavens were blind? Even the heavens pitied the heroes and blessed their descendants. Because of this surprise, Dong Huang was filled with motivation and gratitude towards the heavens. Zi Xieching's agitation was even more understandable. She originally thought that she was destined to be alone for the rest of her life, even though she had Chu Yang as her companion. She was not alone in life, but it was always a regret that her parents were not related by blood. Her life was incomplete, but in this unexpected place, she understood the past. Although she was sad that she could not see her parents again, she was also proud of her parents' past deeds. Although she still had regrets in her life, she was no longer incomplete and could hope for a complete life. And the other one was not direct. At most, it could be said to be an indirect party. But Chu Yang was also unforgettable, because on that very night, Shuai Leihan found an excuse to give Chu Yang a good beating. This beating was really earth-shattering and earth-shattering. In the end, with a pale face, Shuai Leihan said to a certain someone whose face was so swollen that it was almost inhuman, "You fucking big radish! Let me tell you, what is done is done. I can't do anything about it. But remember to treat my niece better in the future. If you dare to bully her, you can try." Chu Yang lay on the ground with tears streaming down his face. "Oh heavens! Oh earth! Why don't you open your eyes? There is actually such an unreasonable person in the world who inverts right and wrong. Have you figured out who is the one bullying who?" He pounded the ground in grief and indignation. "I thought your brother was a bastard, but it turns out you're even worse. He's a bastard at best. You're a fucking bastard. Why don't you fucking figure out the situation before you speak? Why don't you fucking beat me up for no reason? Can't you fucking be reasonable? Besides, when did she become your niece again? Damn it. Zihao is your brother, but am I not? Why is it that in the blink of an eye, you, as the elder brother, actually want to call yourself the father-in-law again? Do you have any shame?" Minister Chu looked extremely aggrieved. "Damn it, I really can't live through this day. Originally, when I didn't have such a backer, I had already been tortured by Zi Xieching thousands of times. Torture after torture, torture after torture. Now I have another backer, Dong Huang. This backer is really hard to deal with. This brother of mine will definitely have enough to deal with in the future." There had never been a moment when Chu Yang yearned to be invincible as much as he did now, to be able to speak loudly. "No matter what, we are still men. No matter what, I can't let my wife's family look down on me. Wait until I have enough strength." Chu Yang stared at Shuai Leihan from the corner of his eyes. This fellow's identity is constantly changing. Originally, he was Dong Huang, then he became my brother, then he was Dong Huang again. But now, he actually secretly calls himself the father-in-law of mine. Who do you think you are? Fine, I will tolerate you today. Wait until I have enough strength. I will definitely teach you, this fake father-in-law, a good lesson. Chu Yang thought fiercely in his heart. After posting the photos today, I discovered a strange phenomenon. Everyone who pursed their lips and said, "Not handsome, very ugly, not as good as me, just a little bit worse than me." Wait, all these jealous words were from men. Everyone who said that he was so handsome, that he charmed me to death, that he fell in love at first sight. All these were from female compatriots. Chapter 24-21. This night, Shuel Leihan sat alone at the peak of the mountain. In front of him was a purple jade table with 3 cups on it. Shuel Leihan had one in front of him and 2 opposite him. Taking out another pot of wine, Shuel Leihan smiled and filled the cup opposite him. He raised his own cup and said softly, "Brother, sister-in-law, your daughter, I've found her for you. Sister-in-law, the child has me. You can rest assured." He finished it in one gulp. Then he spilled the wine on the snow. A water stain appeared on the snow. The water stain gradually seeped down, leaving a wet mark. Many years ago, we drank like this. I've always wanted to ask you, why must we drink at the peak of the mountain? Shuel Leihan looked at the void, as if Zi Hao was standing there. Shuel Leihan raised his cup and finished it in one gulp. At that time, you said that I like this feeling of looking down on the world. When I stand at the highest point, I will feel that the whole world is under my feet. Brother, I don't have this feeling today. I only think of drinking with you, every time at a high point. It's a pity that there's no one here to drink with me now. Shuel Leihan sighed softly. He filled it again, finished it, poured it away, sighed, and filled it again. The night was full of wind and snow. Shuel Leihan sat at the peak of the mountain and drank for the whole night. He drank until the sun rose in the east the next day. He was still sitting there alone, drinking alone with his brother and sister-in-law from 1,000,000 years ago. Was he celebrating the fact that he had finally found his bloodline? Was it melancholy that the hero was no longer here? Was it pity? Was it reminiscence? No one could say for sure what exactly was going on. In the pine forest at the side, Shuai Qi leaned against a tree and watched her elder brother, drinking alone from afar. Her expression was unprecedentedly serious. He didn't move. It was as if he had become one with the pine forest. After a long time, a long howl resounded through the blue sky. Shuel Leihan's voice echoed in the sky for a long time. The heavenly soldiers fought against the purple clouds. Blood stained the battlefield with heroes. What's there to fear when fighting alone? A pillar of strength to be a heavenly sun. Abandoning the bones of a hero, passion turned into a rainbow bridge. Life and death united as family. Drifting heaven and earth accompanied the king. Abandoning his flesh and blood was not his wish. But the war drums in outer space were high. 1,000,000 years of shame. Flesh and blood reuniting is a blessing today. But Dong Huang still exists in this world. Who would dare to look at a girl with cold eyes? To settle the grudges of the past, let's get drunk again. What followed was only Shuel Leihan's long sigh. 2 wine glasses were placed on the table. The sky was filled with white snow, and the wine was still warm, with steam rising from it. It was as if there was a couple across from them, raising their cups and drinking with Dong Huang to their heart's content. Zi Shiqing leaned into Chu Yang's arms. She actually leaned against him for an entire night in such a weak state that she had never been in before. She didn't cry. She was just a little confused. How could this be? I've been used to loneliness for so many years. I've been used to being alone. How could I suddenly have parents? How did he suddenly become the descendant of a hero? Why did he suddenly have roots? But, although he had all these, they were long gone. What's more, it's been 1,000,000 years. Chu Yang and the others snuggled together. None of them opened their mouths to speak. They just leaned against each other like this. Both Chu Yang and Mo Qinggu knew that what Zi Xieching needed the most now was actually not comfort. This accident was, of course, a good thing for Zi Xieching, but it was just a little too sudden. As for the complicated feelings of bitterness, no one would be able to understand it. Perhaps even Zi Xieching herself might not know clearly what she was feeling right now. The heavenly emperor of purple clouds, that legendary hero, that unparalleled hero who fought alone until the last moment, was actually her own father? This sudden fact made Zi Xieching somewhat at a loss. But for some reason, her heart that had always been a little adrift, a little unsettled and insecure, seemed to have settled down from then on, although they're no longer around. But I still have a father and a mother after all. It's not that they don't love me, but because of the invasion of the heavenly demons. For the sake of righteousness, they didn't care about me. But before they died in battle, they still made complete arrangements for me, even though it was for the greater good and not for the sake of personal feelings. He still made sure that I was properly settled. I should be satisfied. She thought of that cave, those inexhaustible resources. As Zi Xieching thought about it, a wave of bitterness and happiness welled up in her heart. She couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile with tears in her eyes. At this moment, Zi Xieching was still unusually weak, no longer as elegant as before, but still exceptionally lovable. Chu Yang hugged Zi Xieching, but in his heart he was thinking, could it be that the heavenly emperor of purple clouds had already sensed the killing intent of the saint, but he couldn't back down in the face of the heavenly demons? His other children had already grown up and had reached the stage where they could fight against the heavenly demons. Only this child was still in the egg and still needed a long time to hatch. For safety, so he sent her far away. He even set a time limit of 1,000,000 years, almost to the point of paranoia. Actually, it was to ensure that she could escape from the evil hands of the saint. But there was another problem here. Even with Zi Hao and Ling Piaoping's cultivation at that time, they might not have the ability to set the seal to 1,000,000 years. Especially when they were already in the midst of a battle, it was difficult for them to be distracted in this way. There was another problem. The person who set the seal was someone else. That black-robed man naturally had the ability to set the seal to 1,000,000 years. But how did they invite that black-robed man? This made Chu Yang especially puzzled. He couldn't understand it at all. If that black-robed man was willing to help them settle down their children, why didn't he help them to suppress the heavenly demons? With that black-robed man's ability, he could almost make the heavenly demons disappear with a wave of his hand. But why didn't he help? This obviously didn't make sense at all. He believed that no one could watch a peerless hero die in front of him like this. At least, Chu Yang knew that he couldn't. And since that person could reach such heights, he definitely couldn't, right? One could only walk on the supreme path with a righteous heart. This was what Chu Yang had always firmly believed. Chu Yang frowned, thinking about everything that he already knew. But he also felt that it was full of fog. He couldn't see anything clearly at all, let alone understand. Mo Qinggu stayed obediently beside the two of them, not saying a word. She just looked at Zi Xieching with concern. The sky gradually brightened. Zi Xieching's emotions also gradually recovered. She straightened her back as she gradually returned to her usual self. She left Chu Yang's arms, combed her hair, and said softly, "I'm fine now." Then she stood up. Her expression became calm and determined again, as if she had resumed the image of the strong big sister Zi, cold and tough, facing the world alone, only leaving her gentleness for the people she liked. How similar was she to the heavenly emperor of purple clouds, who led a lone army to fight against the heavenly demons? In the past, I always thought that I was just a rootless duckweed. Now I finally have roots. Zi Xieching said calmly, "My parents glory in the past, their heroic deeds, even if they don't stop. But it's only their glory. These have nothing to do with me." Her voice trembled a little. "What I can do is to avenge them, pacify the demons, and kill all the heavenly demons." We must kill all the heavenly demons. Zi Xieching looked towards the northeast, where Zi Shao Heavens was. Her voice trembled, but was determined. Restore my heavenly palace of Zi Shao. Of course. Chu Yang saw that Zi Xieching's emotions had recovered. He hurriedly teased her and said, although my father-in-law is no longer around, the foundation of Zi Shao Heavens and the whole of Zi Shao Heavens are naturally left to my wife's dowry. As the saying goes, once you enter my house, you are my family. So Zi Shao Heavens is naturally mine. Of course, I have to snatch it back. Zi Xieching's face turned red. She said angrily, are you asking for a beating? Who entered your house? Chu Yang laughed. Whoever answered me is the one. Sooner or later, she has to enter. Why are you embarrassed? Suddenly he sighed emotionally and said, I didn't expect that I, Chu Yang, would be so lucky to find a wife so casually, and she's actually a noble. Before he finished speaking, Zi Xieching and Mo Qinggu had already joined forces. The two women each gave him a kick without any fuss, landing a solid kick on his buttocks, sending him flying out of the room. The melancholy atmosphere just now was completely wiped out by Chu Yang's ugly jokes. Mo Qinggu said jealously, that's right. Sister Batian is the emperor, even more noble than a noble. Sister Zi is also a descendant of the celestial emperor, a genuine noble. Sister Wu is the daughter of the sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect. In the martial world, you can also be considered a standard noble. Only a wild girl from a small family like me is not a noble. Humph. Chu Yang knew that he had made a mistake with his words. He hurriedly smiled apologetically and tried to salvage the situation. He hurriedly coaxed her with a lot of sweet words and mushy terms. Hearing Chu Yang's exaggerated flattery, Zi Xieching and Mo Qinggu both felt their hair stand on end. They rolled up their sleeves and saw that there was already a layer of dense goosebumps on their smooth and jade-like arms. With a slight shake, goosebumps covered the ground in the morning, when everyone gathered together to eat. Everyone's emotions had already calmed down. Xue Leihan looked at Zi Xieching eating, his face full of love and comfort. Zi Xieching lowered her head and ate silently. Xue Leihan suddenly said, Little girl, be my daughter? You're Zi Hao's daughter. Since you're my daughter, I'll let Godfather protect you in the future. You can do whatever you want in the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Even if he's the son of a saint, you can kill him if you want. It's totally okay. Xueqi coughed and looked at the sky. This bastard. What he said now is really wrong. In order to take in a goddaughter, he actually said that it's okay to kill Master Yun's son. Then he has your nephew. Chapter 24-22. Xueqi thought that if it wasn't Xian Er's children, it wouldn't be a big deal to kill them. But if it was Xian Er's children, then this old man would be killing his own nephews. It was one thing to admit that he had a sister, but nephews he still had them. Zi Xieching said calmly no. Xue Leihan nodded with relief. I knew you wouldn't agree. How can Zi Hao's daughter call someone else father? Even I, Xue Leihan, can't do that. Isn't that right? Zi Xieching smiled. I can call you uncle. Upon hearing her words, Xue Leihan was overjoyed and laughed heartily. His originally smooth chin actually grew a long beard in an instant, making him look like an uncle. However, as he laughed, his beard was blown straight. He said, Of course. You can also call me uncle. Ha, that's how it should be. Zi Xieching said quietly, Actually, I still prefer to call you Big Brother Xue. She blinked and said, People say that if you marry a chicken, you have to follow the chicken, and if you marry a dog, you have to follow the dog. Although I'm your sworn brother's daughter, now I'm marrying another brother of yours. Of course, I have to follow Chu Yang. Otherwise, I'll drag Chu Yang and the rest of my sisters down by a generation. I can't bear such a sin. Everyone was speechless. They were all shocked by Zi Xieching's playful and joyful behavior. The usually cold and aloof Zi Xieching actually had such a cute side. Big brother Shue? Shue Leihan's eyes widened, and he actually stuttered. He was the only one who didn't notice Zi Xieching's behavior. He was mainly shocked by Zi Xieching's words. What? Zi Hao's daughter calls me big brother? If that's the case, then I have to call Zi Hao uncle? You're rebelling. Shue Leihan said angrily, No. Absolutely not. How come after 1,000,000 years, my seniority has actually dropped by a generation? Absolutely not. Mo Qinggu said, Big brother Shue, how can you say that? Sister Zi is my elder sister. Even if I call you, I have to call you big brother. Yours doesn't count. Shue Leihan's face darkened. Mine definitely counts. It must be calculated. Chu Yang calmly came up to join in the fun. What do you mean by that? It's all your fault. Shue Leihan was furious. With a kick, he sent Chu Yang flying out. It's all your fault for being so perverted. You didn't reject anyone and accepted everything. Now you've implicated me and caused me to be demoted as well. Chu Yang covered his buttocks. The pain seeped into his bones, and he shouted furiously, Shue Leihan, you bastard, just you wait. One day, my cultivation will surpass yours. At that time, I will definitely. Just you wait. When the time comes, do you really have to? Why must it be? Shue Leihan smiled sinisterly, baring his white teeth as he asked Chu Yang. The look in his eyes was very dangerous, and he didn't try to hide it at all. It was obvious. Minister Chu would surely receive a violent beating if he didn't listen to Chu Yang's words. Or perhaps he would be brutally tortured? Trample. Seeing that he was about to be violently tortured, Chu Yang instantly raised the truce card. With the strong spirit of a wise man knowing when to retreat, he raised his hand and said, At that time I will definitely give you a proper toast. We will definitely get drunk. After all, we are all brothers. Why would we care about such trivial things? Mo Qinggu and Zi Xieching giggled when they saw this, their beauty moving. Xueqi looked up at the sky and muttered, This spineless fellow. But she had long forgotten that she was far more spineless than Chu Yang when she was facing her elder brother. Humans always have lower requirements for others than they do for themselves. For a moment, the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. Shue Leihan laughed and turned to Zi Xieching. Good. No matter what you call me, I hope that you will live well, practice well, and then walk well in this world. No matter what you call me, no matter what happens, you must let me know. It's still the same sentence. Even if you kill Holy Monarch only, Di Ho, and all the other children, I will take care of it for you. He laughed and said proudly, The daughter of the Heavenly Emperor of Zi Shao was born with such a noble status. Even if Zi Hao is no longer here, as long as Donghuang Shue Leihan is still here, she will still be so noble. This point, there is no doubt. Shue Leihan said the sentence, extremely domineering and classy. Chu Yang nodded repeatedly at the side and flattered in agreement. Big brother Shue is right. Big sister Zi is just so noble. Even if Donghuang Shue Leihan is no longer here, as long as I am here, no one will dare to bully you. Even if you kill all the sons of Holy Monarch, Emperor 1 and Empress D, your husband will take care of it for you. Shue Leihan was speechless. What do you mean by even Donghuang is no longer here? Are you cursing me to die? Chu Yang hurriedly smiled apologetically. I'm coaxing my wife. What does it have to do with you? Don't join in the fun. Shue Leihan frowned even more. How dare you say that I'm joining in the fun? Are you itching for a beating again? Chu Yang's face turned sour. Big brother, can't you leave me some face? Your two sisters-in-law are both here. Shue Leihan chuckled. What kind of noodles do you want? Tell me directly. If you don't tell me, how will I know what kind of noodles you want? Chu Yang looked like he wanted to cry, but had no tears. After a while he said, The heartless heavens! Why do you have to make fun of me, who is affectionate and righteous? Ha ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Everyone was rather happy during the meal. Xue Leihan finally left a trace of divine sense on Zi Xieching's body. Although he wouldn't feel anything during normal times, as long as Zi Xieching was in danger, Xue Leihan would be able to know immediately and rush over immediately. Everyone could see Xue Leihan's determination to protect Zi Xieching. It was an indescribable desire to protect her. Everyone absolutely believed that if there really came a day where Holy Monarch's son was killed by Zi Xieching, then regardless of whether it was reasonable or not, Xue Leihan would definitely mobilize Heaven Cover and fight to the death with Holy Monarch solipsism. Fight to the death. This was Zi Hao's only remaining bloodline. Xue Leihan would definitely not allow anything to happen to her. After this matter finally came to an end, Chu Yang finally asked about another matter that he was concerned about. I say, how do I go back to the Heaven Continent? This matter, without a doubt, only Xue Leihan had the right to speak, because among everyone present, even the entire Heaven Imperial Court, Xue Leihan was the most experienced. You want to go to the Lake of Despair now? Xue Leihan asked him. Yes. Chu Yang nodded and admitted. It's actually very simple. When you reach the East Royal Heavens, I'll open a passage for you. Xue Leihan's face was light. Back then, in order to ensure that the Calamity Sword wouldn't be leaked, I set up space turbulence in the sky above the Heaven Continent to block the possibility of powerful forces from entering. If you don't go through the passage, I'm afraid you'll be hurt. Zi Xieching's eyes widened. So the space turbulence that almost made me return to my original form was actually set up by you. Xue Leihan looked embarrassed. He rubbed his hands and said, Yes, yes. How would I know that you would go so recklessly? Besides, I didn't know your identity back then. Please forgive me. Sigh. Zi Xieching snorted. In fact, she wasn't unhappy. Because it was because of that period of weakness that she met Chu Yang by chance and saw this person who was worth entrusting her life to. From this point of view, it could be considered a blessing in disguise. In fact, from a certain perspective, Xue Leihan could be considered as her matchmaker. Girl, take care of yourself. Xue Leihan and Xue Qi finally bade farewell. In the white snow, Xue Leihan stood with his hands behind his back and said softly, Girl, your father's purple cloud heavens is still waiting for you. Zi Xieching bit her lips and didn't reply. She only nodded slowly. Xue Leihan laughed and said, I'm so happy. For millions of years, I finally felt the taste of happiness again. Chu Yang, take good care of my girl. I'm going. He rose into the air, and in the blink of an eye, he was already 1,000 feet in the air. Xue Qi shouted, Big brother, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Wait for me. He jumped up and chased after him. In the blink of an eye, the two figures had already disappeared in the sky. On the quiet snow mountain, Xue Leihan's laughter was still echoing, but he was already nowhere to be seen. Where are we going next? To the East Royal Heavens, or back to the heavens? Mo Qingguo looked at Chu Yang and Zi Xieching. Obviously, Mo Qingguo was happy to see the idea of returning to the heavens. After all, to Mo Qingguo, other than her big brother Mo Tianji, all her relatives were in the heavens. If she could go back, she could relieve the pain of homesickness. Zi Xieching pondered for a while and said in a low voice, Chu Yang, accompany Qingguo back to the heavens. I want to go to the purple cloud heavens. Chu Yang was silent for a while and said, We'll accompany you there first. Mo Qingguo also nodded worriedly. With Zi Xieching's current mental state, if she were to go to the purple cloud heavens and something were to happen to her, in that place where heavenly demons were everywhere, it was really unthinkable. Zi Xieching shook her head and said seriously, I want to go alone. Chu Yang smiled and said I want to accompany you, not because I'm worried about you, but because I'm really curious about the purple cloud heavens. Besides, that's the place where my father-in-law fought. I have to go and take a look. Zi Xieching forced a smile, and Chu Yang said, You may not know, but I've inherited the purple cloud heavenly emperor's legacy when I was in the heavens. He said slowly, to a certain extent, I'm his successor, or rather his successor. So I have more reason than you to go and take a look at the purple cloud heavens. Zi Xieching's whole body shook violently. Chapter 24-23. As far as the rules of the martial world were concerned, the significance of being the successor or the successor of one's legacy was no small matter. In terms of the degree of closeness to Zi Hao, Chuyang, as the successor, was probably above Zi Xieching, the daughter. There had always been a saying that the legacy was passed down to the daughter-in-law and not to the daughter, because the daughter would eventually become an outsider. Although this saying was rather unreasonable, it was true. Chu Yang deliberately pointed this out to Zi Xieching. I'm not only going to protect you. I have my reasons, and they were sufficient. Chu Yang understood Zi Xieching's temper very well. If this girl was determined to go alone, then she could really sneak away and no one would be able to find her. Zi Xieching turned around like a whirlwind and looked at Chu Yang with sparkling eyes. She suddenly took a step forward. You're saying that you've obtained my Heavenly Emperor Purple Cloud's legacy? Ever since she was born, she had never called them father and mother. Now, with Chun Liyun and the Emperor of the East Kingdom, Jun Shualehan, both of them had proven her identity and background. Although Zi Xieching had long believed in it, she had never doubted it. Moreover, she could also feel that she was indeed the daughter of the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Cloud, Zi Hao, and the goddess of wandering, Ling Piaoping. But she still couldn't say the simple words, my father, no matter how hard she tried. It's true. Chu Yang said softly, my current tribulation space is actually an evolution of the Purple Cloud Pagoda left behind by your father, and the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Cloud left behind countless purple crystal treasures, including holy crystals and even divine crystals. Zi Xieching's delicate body trembled. She couldn't wait to say, let me see. Chu Yang sighed and led Zi Xieching into the tribulation space. At the same time, he gave Emo Qinggu a look. Emo Qinggu followed behind. Sister Zi, wait for me. I want to go in and take a look too. The two girls entered the tribulation space at the same time. Chu Yang sighed silently. Now, he suddenly felt that the responsibility on his shoulders had suddenly doubled. Fighting against the extraterrestrial demons. It was no longer purely for the imperial court and the continent. Now, there was also a personal grudge. The next moment, Chu Yang unexpectedly felt an inexplicable vibration from the tribulation space. It was a violent tremor that almost destroyed one's soul. Chu Yang was gobsmacked. For a moment, he didn't know what had happened inside, especially when he thought that the two women were inside. Sensing the impending danger, he hastily flashed into the tribulation space. The moment they entered and saw the situation before them, they were shocked. They were completely dumbfounded and did not know what to do. The Purple Cloud Tower, which had completely merged with the Medicine King Palace and the tribulation space, was supposed to no longer exist. At this moment, it separated again and began to spin in the tribulation space. Obviously, it was the separation of the purple firmament tower that caused the violent tremors just now. In fact, it made sense when he thought about it. The purple firmament tower was equivalent to a part of the current realm of tribulation, and its share was quite large. How could the tribulation space not change if it split rashly? As the spinning purple firmament pagoda spun faster and faster, its overall volume grew larger and larger. Slowly, it turned into an indomitable pagoda. The body of the pagoda emitted 10,000 rays of purple light. At the top of the pagoda, a majestic seal slowly rotated. Wherever the purple light from the seal shone, for words would appear. Eternal purple firmament. At this moment, Emo Qinggu actually didn't know why she was in the room that Chu Yang had prepared for Tai Batian. Now, she couldn't get out and was screaming anxiously inside. Zi Xieching was the only one near the purple firmament tower. At this moment, her delicate body was trembling violently. standing in front of the purple firmament tower. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the shocking changes in front of her. Chu Yang was shocked to see the changes in front of him. He was stunned for a moment and didn't know what to do. It seemed that, was it because Zi Xieching's entry made the purple firmament tower feel the bloodline of the purple firmament heavenly emperor? But Chu Yang couldn't care less about whether the tribulation space's power would regress or even be destroyed. He only had Zi Xieching in his eyes now. He only cared about her safety. Yet he couldn't go to Zi Xieching's side. He couldn't even get close to her, in a place where heaven and earth were shaking. Suddenly, a majestic voice sounded. The bloodline returns to fight the purple firmament. Seeing this, I should smile. As long as the heavens don't destroy me, I, the purple firmament, I'm proud of life and death. I, Zi Hao. The unusually majestic voice reverberated in the tribulation space. Although it was only one voice, it reverberated endlessly. It was as if millions of people were shouting at the same time. Although no one could see the person, just hearing this voice made one have the urge to kneel down and worship. Then the voice paused for a moment and sighed. Since you can activate the purple firmament tower, you must be of my bloodline. I don't know if you're a boy or a girl. I can't see. But since you have the opportunity to come here, it means that your mother's and my efforts back then weren't in vain. The heavens bless the purple firmament. The heavens bless the purple firmament. This voice was full of relief. At this point, Zi Xieching couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Her delicate body trembled and she suddenly fell to her knees. She shouted, "Father! Mother!" This was the word that had been lingering in her heart all year long since she was born, but she had never said it out loud. At this moment, she said it so naturally, but the voice was indifferent. It didn't have any reaction to this voice. The voice just now was actually the voice left behind by the purple firmament heavenly emperor 1,000,000 years ago. It could only continue speaking mechanically and couldn't really communicate with people. Zi Xieching trembled all over. For a moment, she was overwhelmed with emotions and couldn't control herself. The voice of the purple firmament heavenly emperor continued, but at this moment, the voice of the heroic purple firmament heavenly emperor became melancholy, low and tender. "Child, you're finally here. I've always hoped that you were a girl. Your mother was very, very beautiful. If you were a girl, you'd definitely inherit her beauty and be very, very beautiful. If you were born a boy, the responsibility you'd have to bear would be too heavy. I once swore to your mother that when you were born, the two of us would definitely wait by your side and let you transform into a human at the first moment, even if it would exhaust our cultivation. We wouldn't hesitate to do so. It's a pity that I'm destined to not be able to wait until then. Not being able to see your birth and coming to this world with our own eyes is the greatest regret in our lives. My child, I only hope that your journey in this life will be smooth and safe. Now is the time before the war. Purple Firmament is about to face the final battle. Your mother and I are praying for you. This is just a prayer. All of our wishes. Placing our hopes on the heavens is the only thing your mother and I can do for you. Speaking of which, we're really incompetent as parents. I only hope that when you know the truth in this life of yours, when you know your background, don't blame us. We can die in battle. Facing hundreds of millions of enemies, we can die with a smile. But any resentment or grievance you have, regardless of whether we live or die, it's the greatest torture to us. I never blame you. I don't blame you. Zi Xieching knelt on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Next, child, come in. Let me introduce you, our home, Purple Firmament, and your father's generation that you need to remember, and your brothers and sisters. I hope that you must remember them, because you have to replace them and live on. Remember, as long as you're alive, you're the Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor, the Emperor of Purple Firmament, the leader of the 450 million brothers and sisters, the flag that will never be conquered. will live together with you. You must live well. Child. The purple firmament heavenly emperor's voice turned from gentle to impassioned, and then back again in an instant, making one feel dejected. Child, since ancient times, perhaps there hasn't been any other child. There's no need to live as heavily as you do, a person carrying the hopes of 450 million, but we have no other choice. You must know your own name. You're called Zi Xieching. Perhaps in your perception, this name was changed by you on a whim one day. But actually, I've given you this name a long time ago. No matter if you're a man or a woman, this name will belong to you and will forever belong to you. Zi is my surname, Xia, but it's a little extreme. Her. Purple Firmament has been fighting for many years, but none of those righteous emperors who claimed to be righteous came to fight. Tian, K, Saint also refused to send troops. I'm really tired of the so-called righteousness. So, I might as well just name you Xia. As a person, child, you really shouldn't be too honest. You must remember this, never ever. As for feelings, it's the feelings between your mother and me, and also the feelings of Purple Firmament. The feelings of Purple Firmament will be generous and heroic for eternity. Child, you're called Zi Xieching. The Purple Firmament heavenly emperor was silent for a while, and then he sighed softly. Come, child. Your mother has been waiting for you for a long time. Go in and talk to her. Although she can't see or hear you, you can see her after all. This is what I can do for you, the only chance for you to see your mother. Child, cut your finger and use your blood essence to unlock the biggest secret of Purple Firmament Pagoda. Don't use too much strength. Any bit of pain on your body will make your mother, and I feel heartache. Without any hesitation, Zi Xieching used her finger as a knife and slashed her index finger. Blood gushed out. The purple mist in the sky surged. The blood that flowed out from her index finger turned into a purple mist and quickly merged into it. Immediately after, the purple fog rolled back and surrounded Zi Xieching's hand. It was as if a gentle mother was bandaging the wound of her naughty daughter who had injured her finger. The door of Purple Firmament Pagoda opened suddenly. Let me tell everyone a piece of good news. The web game adapted from World Defying Heavens has reached the final stage of research and development. I can also tell everyone that it's currently being done by the famous 37 Games company in the industry. Under their sincere invitation, I've also taken on the role of the game's worldview architect. I'm just putting my name on it and then giving suggestions. It's actually just a professional criticism. I'll let the game's plot revolve around the original novel and carry out a reasonable adaptation. Currently, there's a plan in the game to let players play the role of the Sword Master, similar to Chu Yang, collect the Sword Calamity and conquer the heavens. Of course, the new expansion pack will gradually release more plots and other extensions. Everyone can pay more attention to it in the future. I'll also share with everyone if there's any other progress. Of course, for the male compatriots who wish that you can have 4 female confidantes and stunning beauties by playing the role of Chu Yang. Ahem. If there's really such treatment, I'll stop writing books long ago. I'm willing to do that and die. Chapter 24:24. A purple mist gushed out. After the door of the Purple Cloud Pagoda opened, it actually transformed into an extremely cozy room. Among them, a beautiful woman was looking at herself with an uneasy expression. She kept asking, "How is it? Is it okay? I don't know if the child will hate me like this." As she spoke, she actually started to cry. My poor child. I actually have to use such a method to see my parents. I really want to hug her, kiss her. Suddenly, she exclaimed, "You've already started." Then, her expression suddenly changed. It became affectionate and sentimental, but also infinitely warm. "Child, I am your mother." As soon as she said this, the woman's eyes turned red again. She tried to hold it in and choked with sobs. "I don't know what you look like. Do you look more like your father or me?" "Mother can't see you, mother." Zi Xieching looked at the woman in front of her in a daze, but didn't dare to move at all. Although it was just an illusory image, Zi Xieching felt infinitely warm in an instant. The moment that gentle face appeared, she felt her heart throbbing. This is my mother. My mother loves me more than anything else. This kind of thought and feeling naturally emerged. Zi Xieching, who had never felt all these, was instantly filled with happiness and satisfaction. There was also sadness and bitterness. Although she knew that her mother couldn't see her, she still wanted to smile and let her see. But once the corners of her mouth moved, the tears in her eyes flowed down uncontrollably. A kind of extreme bitterness and sorrow rushed to her heart. For a moment, she just wanted to cry out loud. But she didn't dare to cry out loud. She could only cover her mouth tightly and look at her mother without blinking. She let her tears flow freely to see her mother. This was the only chance in this life. She was afraid that if she moved carelessly, she would destroy the settings of this space and her mother's figure would disappear immediately. So she didn't dare to move at all. She just looked at her in a daze. At the same time, she told herself, "This is my mother, the mother I've never met. I have a mother too. I'm not an orphan. I'm not an abandoned child. My mother loves me more than any other mother in the world. Child, I missed you so much. Mother really missed you so much." The woman couldn't help but cry. Her beautiful face was full of tears. Beside him, the purple firmament Heavenly Emperor's voice was somewhat helpless as he reprimanded. "You, control your emotions. What do you look like? Wouldn't that make the child even sadder?" I couldn't help it." The woman sobbed. She cried, "I want to see my child. I want to tell her that I love her. I really love her. I've dreamed of seeing her for a long time. I've always wondered what our child would be like. How should I love her? How should I teach her? How should I coax her? How should I coax her? Since she was a child, how should she change year after year? I thought about it for a long time, but now I can only let her see an image. She has never even felt the warmth of a mother's embrace, mother's body odor. If other people's children can do it, why can't our children do it? Zi Hao, why?" That tearful accusation was actually not an accusation at all. Although this question was filled with grief and indignation, it also revealed heartfelt helplessness. This question made the purple firmament Heavenly Emperor, Zi Hao, let out a long and deep sigh. "Child." The woman finally managed to control her emotions. Perhaps it was Zi Hao's sentence of increasing the child's sadness in vain that had a decisive effect. "Child, don't blame your father. Your father may never be a good husband or a good father in this life, but he is an absolutely competent Heavenly Emperor. Your father is a hero, so he is destined to bear much more responsibility than ordinary people. For the purple firmament Heavenly Emperor, your father has already racked his brains and exhausted his heart's blood." She took a deep breath. "Actually, your father loves you very much. Child, your father is indomitable. Your mother, I can only accompany him. Standing on the ground and supporting the sky, there is no turning back, no regrets." In the image, the beautiful woman turned her head and looked to the side. Presumably, at that time, Zi Hao was waiting by the side, because Ling Piaoping's eyes were filled with tenderness. "Child, you have grown up until now, but you have never felt your mother's existence." The woman was choked with sobs. She paused for a while before saying, "Mother is very guilty. I have let you down. In the room next door, there are things that Mother has prepared for you. This is your father's purple firmament pagoda. As long as you personally come, you can open this hidden secret and obtain the things inside. The things inside were all made by Mother for you. Child, you must be happy, you must be happy. Mother doesn't have much time left. There is still a lot behind. I need you to remember. I don't know if you like the things Mother made for you. And the clothes. If you are a boy, I made the clothes according to your father's figure when you grow up. If you are a boy, you will definitely be like your father, an indomitable hero. I really hope that you are a boy, firm and full of tenderness. If you are a girl, I prepared the clothes according to my figure. You should be taller than me, right? Because your father is very tall. Child, remember to put on some clothes. Mother really wants to put on the clothes for you, personally. Go, child. The woman's image froze at that moment. But before it froze, tears flowed out continuously like a fountain. She pleaded, "Let me say a few more words to my child." Zixieqing looked at her in a daze and muttered, "Mother! Mother!" The image changed again and turned into another room. Zihao's voice sounded, "This is what your mother left for you. Child, you must always remember that you have a mother. Your mother is the best mother in the world. She has already prepared everything for you." In this room, there was really everything. There were countless clothes, from babies to grown-ups, and clothes that changed from spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The left row was for men's clothes. The right row was for women's clothes. Row after row, there was almost no end in sight. There were also countless cultivation techniques, from easy to difficult, from entry-level, basic, entry-level, high-level, pinnacle, and pinnacle cultivation techniques. There was everything. The only similarity between these cultivation techniques was that their quality was ridiculously high. To say that they were top-notch was an understatement. There were also countless toys for boys and girls to play with. Some were exquisite, some were grand, and some were warm and cute. Any child who saw these toys would laugh heartily and forget all their troubles and worries. As long as an ordinary child could have it, it was here. What an ordinary child couldn't have, it was also here. It was all-inclusive and had everything. In the innermost position of the room, there was a table with a thick stack of letters on it. Zihao's voice sounded, "Child, these are the letters your mother wrote to you." She recorded in detail what you need to pay attention to in your life. Everything is recorded in them. You can read them in the future. Since the beginning of this battle, when my request for reinforcements was rejected for the first time, I had already expected that the saint would not send any reinforcements to Zishao Heavens, although I had also tried to send out guards to request for reinforcements. I had always had an ominous feeling in my heart. From then on, your mother had started to prepare everything. She had been preparing until today, child. Zixieqing's gaze was fixed on the letter, and she could not take her eyes off it for a long time. There were so many letters. There were more than 1,000 of them. She wondered how much time her mother had used to write every single word. A woman in white seemed to appear in front of her eyes, sitting in front of a desk, writing these letters word by word. As she wrote, she cried after writing these letters. How many tears did her mother shed? She looked at them in a daze. There was a feeling in her heart. If time stops here and doesn't change, I will be satisfied, but whether she was willing or not, the scene was already changing. One by one, there were people appearing and disappearing here. These were all Zihao's surviving relatives at this point in time. Zihao's voice said, "These are all the members of our family, those who are still alive for you to see. The others have already died on the battlefield. The descendants of the Z family have never been afraid of battle, never of death. Outside, they are having a decisive battle. Child, let me bring you out to see your uncles. They are all my brothers." Then the scene changed again. The background had already changed into a big square with many flags. The wind whistled, the sky was filled with clouds and fog, and the sounds of mountains and tsunamis rose and fell, shaking heaven and earth. The moment Zihao walked out, all the sounds stopped at the same time. There was silence. Only the whistling of the wind remained. "Brothers," Zihao's heroic and powerful voice suddenly sounded. At this moment, it actually became fierce and high-spirited, mixed with a strong murderous aura and boundless battle intent. "Today, we have a decisive battle tomorrow. Regardless of whether we live or die after tomorrow's battle, as long as we are here today, Shao heavens is still in our hands. Slaughter all the extraterrestrial demons. How was the first to roar. Below there was a loud roar. Slaughter all the extraterrestrial demons. Shao heavens is ours. Ours. Revenge. As long as there is one person left in Shao heavens and one breath left, we must fight to the end. There are no traitors in Shao heavens. We can only perish together. Shao heavens only has glory. How raised his arm and shouted, "Fight!" Countless people shouted together, "Fight! Fight!" Chapter 24-25. In the boundless sea of people, more than half of them had injuries on their bodies. Some were light and some were serious, but everyone had a stern expression and resolute gazes. There was actually no despair here, no decadence. There was only intense hatred and a strong will to fight. This was undoubtedly a mighty army of iron and steel. Just by looking at this scene, no one would have thought that just one day later, millions of heroes here would forever sleep in purple firmament. Brothers, everyone knows. Hao's voice became cheerful. I still have an unborn child, and now I've already sent him out. Our purple firmament still has descendants, hope, and a future. Good. There was a deafening cheer. Someone shouted, "Let the little prince take back purple firmament in the future." Someone else muttered, "How do you know it's the little prince and not the little princess? You can predict the future." Immediately, laughter shook the sky. Today, use time to freeze everyone's words here. At the same time, let your nephew or niece look at you uncles in the future and remember all of you. Remember purple firmament. The purple firmament that belongs to all of us. How roared, even if he's not born now. He's also a member of purple firmament. Remembering all of you is his responsibility and also his honor. When Hao's words came out, there was suddenly silence below. The purple firmament that belongs to all of us. Hao let out a long howl. Turning his head, he instructed habitually, "Lang Yu, starting from you, first with your nephew, or—" Halfway through his words, he suddenly paused. His lips were also trembling somewhat. Someone at the side said softly, "Protector Lang Yu has already died heroically in battle." Only an inaudible sigh was heard from the purple firmament heavenly emperor, but his face immediately returned to being cold and hard. He said loudly, "Lang Yu is no longer here, then we'll start from you. Whatever you want to say to your nephew or niece, say it directly." Many years later, when he sees this scene, he'll definitely be proud of all of you. He'll also be proud of his father. Because I have all of you. Purple firmament has all of you. When purple firmament was at the end of its road, all of you were with me. We faced death together. Hao's voice was already somewhat tired, but it was still filled with that kind of arrogance that looked down on the world. When he was not talking to his own child, when facing the world, he was only that invincible heavenly emperor of the purple firmament. A figure slowly walked over. The newcomer was a middle-aged man. He silently stood there for a while and said softly, "Child, don't forget, your father is a hero. We all admire him from the bottom of our hearts. Ha, boy, when you see me, don't you think he's really handsome? Get lost. Child, look at me. I'm your Uncle Yang. I've already killed tens of thousands of skyscraping devils. In the entire purple cloud heavens, other than your father, I'm almost the only one. Stop bragging, it's getting dusty. Child, don't listen to him. He's always fighting and killing. What kind of person is that? Child, this is what Uncle wants to give you. When you get it in the future, you must learn it well. Why would the child of His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor, care about your little things? Watch me. Good boy. When you grow up, you must be like your father and be a hero. Child, live well." One by one, people walked over, spoke, and then left. However, no one mentioned war or life and death. Instead, they were all relaxed and calm, trying their best to say some light-hearted and humorous things in the way they could think of in the face of an unborn child. Everyone was doing their best to take care of it carefully. Zi Xieching's eyes were glistening with tears as she pursed her lips. He carefully looked at each person, trying his best to memorize each and every one of them. Finally, someone walked forward. He looked like a rough and fierce person. Someone beside him reminded him softly, "This. Old Black, be careful, don't be too intense." This man, who looked like a chimpanzee, nodded. He walked forward and stood there for a long time, but he didn't speak at all. After a while, his lips moved and finally, as if he had exploded, he squeezed out a sentence. "Child, you must remember, when you grow up, you must kill that bastard Master Yin to avenge your father and everyone in the purple cloud heavens. You must kill that fake Saint Emperor." Before he finished, someone beside him scolded angrily. "Bastard, get lost quickly. What nonsense are you talking about? Let me do it." Then this rough man was kicked out by others. Then another person squeezed over with a face full of smiles. "Child, don't take it to heart. That uncle of yours is actually a lunatic. We don't even know who Master Yun is. And that Saint Emperor, he's not a good person at all. Obviously, these men who are about to walk onto the battlefield, the iron-blooded warriors who are about to walk on the last journey of their lives, were not thinking about leaving hatred for the child. Instead, they hoped that the child would live well, even if they didn't want to avenge him. One by one, they walked forward. However, there were still too many people. There were millions of people. It was impossible to let everyone show their faces. Therefore, while there was still an endless stream of people here, there were already deafening shouts. "Child, you must live well." This roar seemed to have reminded even more people. Wave after wave of loud roars gradually merged into one. "Child, live well. Don't worry about anything. We have no regrets from birth to death. For the imperial court, we have no regrets. We have no regrets following His Majesty. Child, all of us will pray for you. Live well, live happily." From the beginning to the end, the two words "live well" appeared the most frequently, and "live well" was second only to "live well." These heroes knew that they would die in this battle, so they really realized what was the most precious thing in this world. First, it was to live. Then it was to live well. The majestic and intense drum beats suddenly sounded densely. The whole world seemed to be trembling. Everyone's face became fierce and determined at the same time, because the time to go to war had arrived. The voice of the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, Zi Hao, suddenly sounded. A loud roar shook the sky, almost completely scattering the dark clouds in the sky. Formation. The sound of the bugle horn sounded. Follow the previous deployment. Go to war. Zi Hao roared. Eternal purple cloud. Eternal purple cloud. Everyone roared in unison. After today, they didn't know if they would be able to roar the slogan again. The loud sound directly stirred up the dust on the ground. In the distant mountain, there was a rumbling echo. In the image, groups of people and horses rode out neatly. They waved and left just like that. No one turned back to take another look. In the image, Zi Hao's tall and majestic figure stood just like that, watching his soldiers walk out one by one. His face was cold, and his gaze was cold and sharp. At this moment, he was no longer the loving father from before, but a cold-blooded and merciless commander. The rumbling sound became more and more distant. The image pulled further and further away. There was a huge gate in the distance. This gate was really big. It was 10,000 feet tall and tens of thousands of feet wide. There were 3 big words on it. Purple Cloud Pass. A clear and anxious voice sounded. "Let me go over." Zi Xieching heard, and her delicate body shook. Mother, a beautiful figure in white, suddenly appeared in the sky. Her figure was slim, and her white clothes were as white as snow. Her white clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind. There was a sword in her hand, and the cold light was shining. But Ling Piaoping's gaze only looked there. Her eyes were full of obsession and longing. Her red lips opened slightly and tears flowed down her face. She muttered, "Child, forgive Mother. Mother is going to accompany your father. Child, my child, my child." In the image, she stretched out her hands, as if wanting to hug her child. But her arms were only half open. They stopped in midair. Tears gushed out crazily from her eyes like a broken dam. "Mother's biggest wish is to hug you and see how you look like." Ling Piaoping looked here pitifully. Her eyes were full of powerless longing. "Go to battle." Zi Hao's voice was hoarse and strangely nasal, as if he was trying hard to suppress some kind of emotion. But he still gave the order resolutely. His voice echoed in the air. That burly figure had already rushed into the sky and held Ling Piaoping's hand. His back was facing this side. One could faintly see that his thick shoulders were trembling, slightly. Was he crying? But he didn't turn around in the end. He only left a tall and straight figure for his child, a figure as broad as a mountain, as if it was going to hold up the sky. So indestructible, so dependable. "Let's go." Zi Hao said hoarsely, "Child." Ling Piaoping screamed sharply. Then Zi Hao pulled her and they flew out at high speed. She, who was flying at high speed, was still stubbornly heading towards this side. She was pulled further and further away. His white clothes fluttered, his black hair danced. That pitiful gaze, that longing, and that final figure seemed to be wedged into Zi Xiqing's heart. That pitiful cry was still echoing, but the image suddenly stopped. Zi Xiqing was shocked to see the image disappear. She took 2 steps forward subconsciously, as if she wanted to retrieve the image that had disappeared. But she only heard Zi Hao's tired voice. "Child, this is the last battle. The other parties, 3 great heavenly demon kings, have already arrived. I won't let you see the battlefield. As for your mother," Zi Hao's voice was a little choked. He suddenly stopped. After a pause, he said, "I can only tell you, in the purple cloud heavenly army now, I'm the only one left." Chu Yang and Zi Xiqing were shocked. Only one person left. That was to say, at this time those countless heroes and Zi Xiqing's mother, Ling Piaoping, had all died heroically. Chapter 24-26. Zi Hao's voice was still going on. 130 million extraterrestrial demons have all turned into dust in purple cloud heavens. And I am still fighting, and I will continue to fight. You must remember, no matter what, do not forget the pride of purple cloud heavens. As long as there is one person left, we can continue to fight. As long as there is a breath left, we must continue to fight. Child, at the last moment, let me sing a song for you. Your mother has always wanted to sing for you, but Now, let me sing this belated song for you." After a moment of silence, Zi Hao's hoarse voice sounded. His singing was not pleasant to the ears, and his voice was also extremely hoarse. However, Zi Xiqing was listening to him seriously, as if she was on a pilgrimage. Purple cloud heavens, this is our home, this is our land, our paradise. Who dares to invade? He must come and not return." Zi Hao sang softly, as if there was no one around. He sang this song with all his heart and soul. Zi Xiqing's tears flowed down her cheeks, but she did not dare to make any sound. She did not even dare to choke, for fear that the slightest sound would disturb the singing. This song belonged to her father, and she would only have this one chance to hear it in this lifetime. One could hear that the surroundings of the purple cloud heavenly emperor were unusually chaotic. And he had also said just now that he was the only one left in purple cloud heavens. In that case, what was the thing beside him? The answer was obvious. Extraterrestrial demons. Purple cloud heavenly emperor, surrounded by millions of extraterrestrial demons. As if there was no one else around, he sang a song for his child tenderly, although what he sang was actually still a battle song. But that intense fatherly love seemed to have crossed the long river of time and arrived here, in the image, The surrounding noises suddenly quietened down. A voice that was so strange that it did not sound like a human's voice said, "Zi Hao, Purple Cloud, Heavenly Emperor, we are here." Then Zi Hao's voice exhaled softly and said, "Child, farewell." Then he said softly, "Purple Cloud, Tower, I hope you can wait for my child." Then, suddenly, all the sounds began to leave. This should have been the Purple Firmament, Heavenly Emperor's ultimate technique that reversed the universe at the last moment to make the Purple Firmament Pagoda leave him. At that moment, a faint long whistle sounded from near to far, but it was filled with a sense of heroism. In the end, it completely disappeared and returned to nothingness. But if one thought about it, one would know that it was definitely the Purple Firmament, Heavenly Emperor's final battle cry. Although the duration was very short and it almost vanished in an instant, in this moment, in that instant. Chu Yang's blood boiled when he heard this long roar. What kind of crazy fighting spirit was that? This aura, it only belonged to Zi Hao. It only belonged to the Purple Firmament, Celestial Emperor. The scene finally ended. The doors of the Purple Firmament Tower opened quietly. There was no one inside, waiting for Zi Xieching to enter. Zi Xieching was in a daze for a while. Suddenly, she burst into tears. "Father, Mother, don't leave me." There was no response from the Purple Firmament Pagoda. There was only silence. Chu Yang felt that his face was wet. He reached out and wiped it. Only then did he realize that his face was already overflowing with tears. Zi Xieching was exhausted on the ground. She looked at the Purple Firmament Pagoda that had already opened, but she had no desire to enter at all. Perhaps she was not looking at the Purple Firmament Pagoda that had reappeared, but the scene that had already disappeared. Her father's figure had disappeared. Farewell was eternal. She would never see him again. So what if there were countless treasures in the Purple Firmament Pagoda? There was no father or mother in there. So what if she went in? Since there was no meaning to her, then what was the point of going in? Zi Xieching, who gradually recovered her thoughts, suddenly felt a sense of loss. At the same time, as her heart became more and more upset, there was also a surge of strong and bitter happiness. I finally saw my father and mother. There were also many elders and friends. It turned out that I was really not an orphan. I had a home, relatives, old friends, a hometown, a country. Zi Xieching was obviously smiling, but the tears in her eyes kept falling down. "Let's go in." Chu Yang came to her side and said softly, "Go in." "What's the point of going in?" Zi Xieching smiled sadly. "They're not in there anymore." Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "They're not in there anymore. Or should I say, they never existed in there." This sentence was undoubtedly very cruel. Zi Xieching felt a burst of anger and looked at him fiercely. Chu Yang completely ignored the beauty's ferocious gaze and continued without a pause. "Everything you saw just now, from the beginning to the end, was only an illusory image, a completely unreal image. But from this moment onwards, everything you see after entering the Purple Cloud Tower is real and not illusory. Those are the real things that your father and mother left for you. They will truly accompany you through your whole life. From those things, you can find the aura that your father and mother left for you. Which aura is what you should really cherish." Chu Yang said softly. Zi Xieching's body trembled slightly, and her lifeless eyes suddenly glowed with a little vitality. "So, those are the real gifts that they left for you. If you don't accept them, don't feel their aura and feel their sincerity, even if they die, they will feel regret," Chu Yang said solemnly. I'll go now." Zi Xieching suddenly stood up. Vigorous, vital energy surged all over her body. She waved her hand to stop Chu Yang from continuing. She said softly, "Yes, you're right. That's the real thing that they left for me. And those letters are the real memories that my mother left for me." At the mention of those letters, Zi Xieching suddenly had an impulse to see those letters. With the end of the shadow image and the opening of the Purple Firmament Pagoda, The tribulation space had already regained its peace. At this time, Emo Chingu also came out of that room, pouting unhappily. When the purple firmament heavenly emperor was talking just now, Emo Chingu was actually completely blocked out. She had no power of autonomy at that time, and that feeling was really too depressing. Fortunately, everything was over now, and that confining force also naturally disappeared along with it. The three of them entered the purple firmament pagoda, and the moment they entered, Chuyang was violently shocked. The purple firmament pagoda had changed too much after the transformation. It was directly an infinitely vast space inside, and the large space also contained small spaces. All kinds of materials were dazzling, and everything that one could think of was there. Weapons, armors, from weapons used by children to divine weapons used by adults, martial techniques and inheritances, elixirs and spirit medicines, heavenly materials, and earthly treasures. Everything that one could think of could be found here. Just like that, they looked through room by room, and the shock in their hearts became more and more intense. And all of this was prepared at the last minute when Zihao was almost at the end of his rope, and it could already be considered as a treasure trove that had everything one could think of. If a celestial emperor deliberately prepared it during his prime, how exaggerated would it be? That was really something that no one could imagine. Zi Xieching touched and played with them one by one, with a doting smile at the corners of her mouth, but her eyes were filled with tears. Each and every one of these cold things in her eyes was filled with a strong sense of fatherly love, a strong sense of motherly love. She looked up at the sky, seemingly crying and laughing at the same time, crying and laughing at the same time. For a moment, she really felt that her spirit was somewhat hysterical. It was a hysterical surprise, warmth, and also a hysterical melancholy and missing, endless missing. Father, mother, thank you. Thank you for preparing all of this for me. Zi Xieching closed her eyes and thanked them wholeheartedly. It's all of you, all of this that you left behind that really made my life complete at the last moment of my life. All of you are still so considerate of me. I really feel that I'm no longer lonely, no longer wandering. I'm also someone who is missed and cared for. At first, Zi Xieching was very anxious to find those letters that her mother wrote to her, but as she looked through room by room, her mood gradually calmed down. All of these were prepared by her father. Perhaps her father's love was not as direct and gentle as her mother's, or even full of dominance. But it was this dominance that made Zi Xieching feel the happiness of being disciplined by her parents. Chuyang, say, if my father was still around, would he hit me when I'm naughty? Zi Xieching tilted her head and asked, with a face full of reverie. He would definitely hit you hard. Chuyang said with certainty. She really didn't know where his confidence came from. He would hit you until you couldn't take care of yourself. Humph! Zi Xieching snorted. Emo Chingu chuckled. Chuyang doesn't understand at all. A father may hit his son with a stick, and it's also possible that he would beat him to death. But towards his own daughter, he would never be ruthless. At most, he would just reprimand a few words. He would have to think for a long time before saying a harsh word. How would he hit you? Chuyang rolled his eyes. How do you know this? Has your father ever treated you like this? This sentence instantly offended the two women at the same time. Humph! Emo Chingu and Zi Xieching snorted at the same time, turned their heads, and walked forward hand in hand. Finally, they reached the room where the letters were left. That room was at the very end, It was a big room, or more accurately described as a big warehouse. When the three of them walked to the door, Zi Xieching seemed to have a premonition of something, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Chapter 24-27. Chuyang sighed softly. He stretched out his hand, and the door opened gently. A dazzling array of clothes of various colors came into view. She had seen this image before in the previous scene. However, the feeling of seeing the virtual image and seeing the real thing was completely different. At this moment, Zi Xieching was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. There were faint bloodstains on the first few pieces of baby clothes. That should have been caused by her mother's hand when she was sewing the baby clothes due to her lack of proficiency. Zi Xieching squatted down and gently touched the bloodstains on the clothes. She said softly, "Mother." "Mother." She walked over step by step. It could be seen that Ling Piaoping was getting more and more proficient in sewing clothes. However, there were so many clothes here. Even if it was made by a peerless expert, it would still take a lot of time, because a peerless expert did not mean that she was a peerless sewing expert. Every stitch and thread was a mother's ardent love and care for her child. They were all filled with deep love and devotion. Also, the guilt of not being able to personally raise her child. She was trying her best to make up for it in this way. She was trying her best to make up for the child that she could not see. She was using everything that he or she could feel. Zi Xieching's emotions that had just calmed down suddenly broke down again. She covered her face with her hands and cried bitterly. Ever since Zi Xieching was born, there had never been a day where she cried so many times like today. Or rather, she had never cried before. But in this room that was filled with her mother's aura, Zi Xieching cried bitterly. Her heart was broken, and she was hovering between life and death. Chu Yang quietly held Mo Qingwu's hand. He gently retreated. He gently closed the door and left Zi Xieching alone inside. This room only belonged to Zi Xieching alone. At this moment, although she was sad, although she was in pain, although she was bitter, but what Zi Xieching needed most was to be alone, with her mother's aura alone in this room, quietly interacting with each other and being alone. Although Chu Yang could not bear to do this, but this was the only way. At the same time, he also realized one thing. From now on, this room would probably become Zi Xieching's sacred place. An unshakable, sacred place. But was it a good thing or a bad thing for Zi Xieching to keep this room? Chu Yang could not understand. The benefits were obvious. It was tough and tiring. She could come in. This was her mother's embrace. Here, he could vent some of the grievances in his heart and disperse much of his depression. At the very least, it was a place to reminisce. However, the disadvantages were equally obvious. If Zi Xieching's heart was always in this room, if she could never walk out of this state of mind, she would never be truly happy in this lifetime. Mo Qingwu could understand Chu Yang's worries. She said softly, "Don't worry. Sister Zi is so strong. She will definitely walk out on her own. Furthermore, I believe that the purple firmament heavenly emperor did not arrange such a place just to make his daughter sad. How could a big shot like him not consider this? This kind of thing can't be rushed. We can only take one step at a time." Mo Qingwu looked at Chu Yang encouragingly. "That's the only way. I hope your idea comes true." Chu Yang sighed and nodded. The two of them left the tribulation space and began to travel at full speed. He sped all the way to Zi Shaotian. Now, the primary goal was to fulfill Zi Xieching's wish. But along the way, in the first 10 days, Zi Xieching did not come out. She just stayed quietly in that room, filled with motherly love. No one knew what she was doing. But at this time, no matter what, they could not disturb her. They could not bear to disturb her. Although Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu were very worried, they did not dare to go in and persuade her. If they did, it would be counterproductive and not beautiful. Seeing Zi Xieching now, Chu Yang could not help but think of his own past. In the past, he was like Zi Xieching, not knowing who his parents were. But he was happier than Zi Xieching. He had a master, a junior brother, a senior sister, and later on, he found out about his identity. His parents were still alive, but Zi Xieching now. This also led to the dullness of the journey. Chu Yang didn't even tease Mo Qingwu anymore. One must know that teasing Mo Qingwu in the past was one of Chu Yang's greatest joys. He used to tease Mo Qingwu and make her blush, pout, and chase after him along the way. It was really like chasing the stars and the moon. With the speed of these two high-level saints, they had already left ink cloud heaven's territory in a few days. Flying above the ocean that separated one side of the world and the other side of the world, the two of them had already crossed the demon emperor heaven's territory and crossed the Mist River. They entered the east royal heaven that they had not seen for a long time. The two did not stop at all and rushed all the way to the northeast. On the 17th day, there was already a sense of desolation. Chu Yang made a rough estimate and was actually shocked by himself. He had already brought Mo Qingwu and rushed for no less than 300,000 miles. They had crossed 4 big worlds and finally approached the legendary border of Purple Cloud Heaven. Here, it was almost tens of thousands of miles of desolation. Every few hundred miles, there was a relatively eye-catching road sign and stone tablet. The nearest one wrote, 7,300 miles ahead is the fallen area. Fallen area. Looking at these 3 words, Chu Yang suddenly felt an extremely strong anger rising from his heart. What was a fallen area? That was Purple Cloud Heaven. Although it had fallen temporarily, but that was still Purple Cloud Heaven. How did it become a fallen area in the eyes of these officials? Although he logically agreed that there was nothing wrong with the officials putting up such a notice board, Chu Yang still couldn't accept it emotionally. The place that such a peerless hero had once fought and defended with his life was actually in the eyes of others. It had become a fallen area. What a bullshit fallen area. Chu Yang stood in front of the nearest road sign and stone tablet for a long time. Suddenly, he used his fingers like a knife and drew. His finger pointed. Stone chips flew, and many words slowly appeared on the stone tablet. Chu Yang added a paragraph of his own words on the stone tablet. Although Purple Cloud Heaven has now become a fallen area, this is still the place where heroes had once fought bravely. Those heroes who had once fought could also smile and feel no guilt when faced with this so-called fallen area. But those who did not participate in the battle and watched coldly from the sidelines, although they were still alive, their hearts, they had already fallen long ago. Those places are the real fallen areas. The ones who have truly fallen are the people's hearts, not Purple Cloud Heaven. Then Chu Yang signed his name. Chu Yang. Even though he was filled with resentment, he still couldn't vent his anger. However, he could only let out a heavy sigh. At this moment, there was a sudden movement in the tribulation space. There was movement on Zi Xieching's side. Chu Yang hurriedly let her out. At this moment, Zi Xieching was dressed in white, but it was not the style she usually wore. The style she was wearing now was more reserved and more elegant than the original one. This should be the clothes that Ling Piaoping had made for Zi Xieching back then. There was no sadness or joy on Zi Xieching's face, only calmness. In fact, there was a faint satisfaction and gentleness. She was like a completely different person from before, but she was definitely not the kind of person who was hysterical because of excessive grief. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. This was very different from what he had imagined. What are you looking at? Zi Xieching smiled sweetly. There was actually some gentleness in her expression. This sentence really gave Chu Yang a shock. Since when did Zi Xieching speak in such a feminine manner? Then he understood. However, he sighed in his heart and said, "You look like your mother now." Zi Xieching's face was filled with joy. She said, "Really?" Then she turned around and saw the stone tablet in front of her. Her face darkened and she said angrily, "Since when did our Purple Cloud Heaven become a fallen area?" She waved her hand, obviously wanting to destroy this stone tablet. Chu Yang hurriedly stopped her. "Don't be rash." As they were talking, there was a sudden rustling sound in the sky. Someone said sternly, "Who is it? How dare you damage the road sign stone tablet?" Following the voice, a man in black flew over and landed in front of the 3 of them. This person was tall and had long legs. He was wearing a long black cloak, like a black cloud, but he was extremely majestic. His face was rough, and his whole person looked as if it was made of steel. When he landed, he saw the words on the stone tablet at first glance. After a glance, he was actually stunned. Zi Xieching said coldly, "Purple Cloud Heaven is the purple cloud heaven of the Heavenly Imperial Court." Since when did the people of the Heavenly Imperial Court not recognize Purple Cloud Heaven as a part of the world? Why do they keep talking about fallen areas? What does it matter if such a road sign stone tablet is destroyed? That man looked at the three of them with an unusually complicated gaze and sighed deeply. He came with a belly full of anger, but after hearing the three of them reprimanding him, he was actually speechless. There was a hint of embarrassment on his bronze-colored face. He said that I won't pursue this matter further. You'd better leave this place quickly. Young people better not come to such a place. Be careful not to get into trouble. As he said, he looked at the road sign stone tablet again. Finally, there was a look of shame on his face. He said, "This road sign was made by us brothers in the beginning. Our original intention was to warn future people not to step into places already occupied by the extraterrestrial demons, so as to avoid getting killed. But we didn't expect that there would be such a flaw." "It's our fault," Chuyang nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Zi Xieching say sternly, "You have good intentions, but have you considered the feelings of the people of Purple Cloud Heaven? Have you thought about the feelings of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor and the others who had fought for Purple Cloud Heaven till the last moment?" Chapter 24-28. If it were you, would you be willing to allow others to call the homeland that you love so dearly a fallen area? Do you know how many unyielding and loyal souls are buried in this area? Which one of them isn't more noble than the people of the Heaven Imperial City who are still singing and dancing now? The burly man was at a loss for what to do. He was speechless for a moment, and beads of sweat actually appeared on his forehead. After a while, he said in a flurry, I'll go back and discuss how to change it." Chuyang pulled Zi Xieching and said, "I'll have to trouble you then. However, the words fallen area are indeed not very nice." The burly man smiled honestly and said, Yes, we indeed didn't consider it enough back then. May I ask if the three of you have a deep relationship with the Purple Cloud Heavens? If they didn't have a deep relationship, they wouldn't be so agitated, right?" But he didn't expect that among the three people in front of him, one was the daughter of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor, and the other was the inheritor of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor. The only one who wasn't directly related to them was Emo Chinguo, the sister of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor's daughter, the wife of the inheritor, and the exclusive inheritor of the martial techniques of the Purple Cloud Heavenly Empress. Chuyang didn't answer this question directly. He only looked at the burly man in front of him with undisguised admiration. He smiled and said, "There aren't many of you here, right?" He paused and said, or rather, "There aren't many people who are still fighting in the Purple Cloud Heavens now, right?" The burly man immediately became vigilant. "Who are you people? Why are you asking these questions?" A kind of warmth rose in Chuyang's heart. He suddenly thought of a few sentences, opening the reincarnation passage with the body, opening the door to the outer realm. Bones as the wall, flesh as the road, blood as the wind, and soul as the sky, sending my brother to the outer realm to fight the extraterrestrial demons, nurturing my brother and reconstructing his physical body, becoming an immortal golden body, helping my brother to dominate the outer realm and achieve immortal achievements, letting my brother enjoy the glory of heaven and earth and receive the supreme glory. As he thought about it, he asked tentatively, "Do you know, Brother Jie?" Upon hearing this, the burly man's expression changed immediately. "Who exactly are you?" The burly man shouted fiercely. An ominous glint flashed in his eyes as he looked at Chuyang with a murderous look in his eyes. His hand was already holding the hilt of his sword. It could be seen that the words "Brother Rob" had seriously touched this big man's psychological defense line. Chuyang could trigger a life and death battle if he said something wrong. Does it matter who I am? I'm just a junior, so even if I told you, you wouldn't know." Chu Yang sighed. His expression was filled with desolation. "I'm just casually asking you a question. You don't have to be so nervous. I'm not your enemy." "What brother Jia?" the burly man shouted. "What kind of weird name is that? I've never heard of it." "There has never been a brother here," he roared loudly. His eyes were filled with murderous intention as he glared at Chu Yang. With a stern voice, he said, "If it weren't for the fact that you're still young, I would have made you bleed 3 feet today. If you know what's good for you, leave quickly. When you encounter the heavenly demons, don't blame me for not warning you beforehand." After saying this, he suddenly shot up like a meteor and instantly disappeared without a trace. And Mo Qingguo looked at the burly man leaving, deep in thought. She said, "Chu Yang, do you think he's—" Chu Yang nodded deeply and said solemnly, "He must be. Apart from them, I believe no one else would have such a big reaction to the words Brother Jia. If he was a native of the Heaven Imperial Court, he wouldn't know what Brother Jia is at all." Deep sorrow appeared on Chu Yang's face. He said, "The previous master of the Jia sword. I don't know when this misunderstanding will be resolved. I originally thought that Wu Jueqing had come to the Heaven Imperial Court. Perhaps this misunderstanding has already been resolved. Turns out the misunderstanding is actually still." The 3 of them continued forward. After walking for about a few thousand miles, they saw white fog in front of them. It was so dark that they couldn't even see their own fingers. Below them was actually a huge river. No one's divine consciousness could extend in this city of white fog. No one's cultivation could fly in this city of white fog. This kind of place was similar to Misty River, but it was different. The white fog connected the sky above and the river below. There was no end to it, and on this river there was only one bridge, a bridge that was only 30 feet wide. If one wanted to go to the other side, one could only cross this bridge. Otherwise, even if one had the cultivation of a saint, one could only walk across this bridge, step by step. On the other side of the bridge, there was a stone tablet. On it were written 5 big words, "The first pass in the world." There were no castles or checkpoints. Just this bridge was the first pass in the world. When Chu Yang saw it, he couldn't help but sigh softly. What a great first pass in the world. It lives up to its name. It was indeed the first pass in the world. It was really a pass that one man could hold against 10,000. This was the only passageway from the purple cloud heavens to the other parts of the Heaven Imperial Court. When Chu Yang and the other 2 stepped onto this bridge, they instantly felt a very strange feeling. Zi Xieching couldn't help but say, "If my father could retreat to this side of the bridge and just defend it, wouldn't no matter how many billions of extraterrestrial demons came, they wouldn't be able to cross? Why would my father still fight the enemies on the other side of the bridge?" Chu Yang sighed deeply. Once you cross this bridge, you're no longer in the purple cloud heavens. With the pride of the purple cloud heavenly emperor, why would he cross this bridge? He would rather die on the other side of the bridge than return to the east side of the bridge. Zi Xieching looked at this bridge in a daze. After a long time, she also sighed deeply. Chu Yang was absolutely right. This was indeed the fundamental reason why the purple cloud heavenly emperor didn't retreat back then. I'm the purple cloud heavenly emperor. If I had to abandon my homeland and go to other people's territory to fight, how could I still be called the purple cloud heavenly emperor? Wouldn't it be better to just call me a stray dog? Although the purple cloud heavenly emperor wasn't in front of them, his state of mind at that time was still on the verge of appearing. There was no need to have any doubts. The 3 stepped onto the bridge and walked into the white fog. After walking for less than 3,000 feet, they heard someone in front of them ask, "Who are the visitors? This place is forbidden." The voice was resolute and filled with a tyrannical meaning that there was no room for compromise. Chu Yang frowned. He thought to himself that this wouldn't be easy to get through. Following the voice, a golden light suddenly flashed in the white fog. 3 people flashed out and crossed the bridge, blocking the way. 2 of them had long hair and golden robes, while the other was dressed in white. At this moment, they were looking at Chu Yang and the other 2 with scrutiny. "Who are you people?" Perhaps it was because they saw that Chu Yang, Zi Xieching, and Mo Qinggu were all humans and came from the direction of the celestial imperial court. Furthermore, the man was handsome and elegant, while the woman was beautiful and peerless. At one glance, they didn't look like bad people. They had a good impression of them, and their tone was more or less gentler. Chu Yang smiled and said, "Everyone has worked hard. The few of us are descendants of the purple cloud, heavenly imperial court. We want to go over and see our homeland." "Descendants of the purple cloud, heavenly imperial court?" The white-robed man frowned and said lightly, "You must be joking. There are no descendants of the purple cloud, heavenly now. After this first bridge, it will be the battlefield. There are only warriors. And I dare to guarantee that there are no warriors of the purple cloud, heavenly." Zi Xieching sneered and said, "That's because before you came, the warriors of the purple cloud, heavenly, had already sacrificed themselves heroically." The white-robed man looked solemn and said, "That's right. Therefore, right now, my brothers and I are fighting in the homeland of the heroes. We can't let down the land under our feet. Every inch of land is stained with the blood of heroes." Zi Xieching took a deep breath, and her tone became much gentler. "Please make way. Let us pass. Let us see our homeland." The white-robed man looked at Zi Xieching with a sharp gaze and asked almost word by word, "But where is your homeland in the purple cloud, heavenly?" Zi Xieching was about to explain, but when she thought of the name of the city that she was so proud of, she suddenly felt a sense of pride. She puffed out her chest and said loudly, "My homeland is the purple imperial city." Purple imperial city. The white-robed man's expression changed and became stern. The purple imperial city, as early as 1,000,000 years ago, had already turned into ruins with the fall of the purple cloud, heavenly emperor. None of the tens of millions of people of the purple cloud, heavenly emperor, were spared. Even the whole family of the purple cloud, heavenly emperor, sacrificed themselves heroically. Isn't it a little too boastful for you to claim to be a descendant of the purple imperial city? Ha! You're blaspheming the homeland of heroes. Zi Xieching said, "Do I need any proof to say that I'm from the purple imperial city?" The white-robed man did not relax and said, "That's right. You need proof of identity. If you say that you're a descendant of the people of the purple cloud, heavenly emperor, I can still believe it. But now that you say that you're a descendant of the purple cloud, heavenly emperor, I have to ask clearly. Otherwise, others can go over. Even the people from the various big sects and heavenly palaces who came for the trial can also go over. But only you, miss, can't go over." He smiled coldly. "You mentioned the 3 words, purple imperial city, and claim to be a descendant of the purple imperial city. Whether it's intentional or not, you're blaspheming the most respected person in our hearts. Because you're fake, and the meaning behind this name can't be impersonated by anyone." Zi Xieching was agitated and said, "The most respected person in your hearts? Who?" The white-robed man looked at Zi Xieching coldly and said lightly, "There's no harm in telling you. This isn't a secret in the first place. That person is the purple cloud, heavenly emperor, who fought alone until his death. Zi Hao." His sharp eyes looked at Zi Xieching, and his words were even sharper. "Miss, if you want to deceive others, we can't do anything about it in other places. But in this land, there's absolutely no one who can blaspheme the purple cloud, heavenly emperor in front of us." Zi Xieching was not angry when she heard that. Instead, she felt gratified and proud. But at the same time, she was also a little depressed. Chapter 24-29. Looking at their expressions, he knew that he had gotten himself into trouble by saying, "Descendants of the purple imperial city." Otherwise, he could have just made up a random sect name and pretended to be a member here for the trial, and he could have passed. But only the words Purple Imperial City and Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds were a huge taboo. But even though he had committed such a taboo and was blocked here, he couldn't get angry at all. Because the person they respected the most was his father, whom he respected and loved the most. Zi Xieching turned to look at Chu Yang as if asking for help. Chu Yang took a step forward and said, respectfully, "The three of you are so loyal to your duties that I really admire and respect you. But may I know your names?" The two at the side wanted to speak, but the man in white raised his hand lightly, just a slight raise of his hand, and the two at the side immediately stopped talking. The man in white looked at Chu Yang and said, dispassionately, asking for names, "Are you trying to build connections? It's a pity that this is useless to us brothers. Young man, Purple Clouds Heavens is not a place you should come to. Go back to where you came from, lest you lose your life by accident." Although the man in white's voice was calm, his eyes were exceptionally sharp, as if he could see through people's hearts. This kind of gaze reminded Chu Yang of Mo Tianji. Suddenly, Chu Yang vaguely guessed the identities of these people. Although he couldn't name these people, Chu Yang dared to be certain. To be able to guard this first bridge, to assume such an important position, they must be those people. The previous generation's Tribulation Brothers, and this man in white in front of him. He was very likely the brains of the previous generation's Tribulation Brothers. He was roughly equivalent to Mo Tianji and Diwu Chouchang. He was the core figure of the Tribulation Brothers. Chu Yang's mind turned. He said, "Since all of you are so loyal to your duties here and don't let us pass, I can't do anything about it. I just want to ask about a person. I heard that this person also came here a few days ago but hasn't returned. Do you know of such a person?" The man in white's eyes flashed. He asked calmly, "Who? What's his name?" Chu Yang said his name is Wu Jueching. At this moment, Chu Yang's gaze was fixed on the faces of the three people in front of him. If Wu Jueching had been here before, he believed that it was impossible for these people not to know. Regardless of whether these people and Wu Jueching were brothers of tribulation in the same era or not, they were all once tribulation. There had to be a mutual exchange of information, especially when they were comrades who fought on the same battlefield. Lin Sanjiu believed that as long as they knew this name, their expressions would change. Even if the white-robed man was able to control his expression, the other two men beside him might not be able to do the same. Chu Yang stared at the faces of the three without blinking. Unfortunately, there was no expression on their faces at all. It was as if he had heard a completely unfamiliar name. "What Wu Jua City, Ju City? We've never heard of that name." Chu Yang sighed. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be an act. In other words, it meant that Wu Jueching hadn't arrived yet. Or perhaps they had already arrived, but had yet to arrive here. Two questions arose in Chu Yang's mind. Firstly, Chu Lu and Mo Tianji had gone to look for Wu Jueching. Where were they going to look for him? Secondly, how was he going to get past this hurdle? Fight? That was definitely not possible. Even if he didn't consider whether he could defeat them or not. Even if he could, he couldn't. These people in front of him were the main battle forces guarding the borders of the Purple Clouds Heavens. If he injured them, wouldn't that be equivalent to indirectly helping the extraterrestrial demons? Besides, the people in front of him were quite powerful. He might not be able to defeat them. Besides, who knew how many people were waiting ahead along the way? Did he really have to fight his way through? Right at this moment, Zi Xieching gritted her teeth, stepped forward and said, "How do you know that I'm not the descendant of the Purple Clouds, Heavenly Emperor City? Didn't you want evidence?" "I'll give you evidence." Chu Yang was shocked. He hurriedly said, "Don't be rash." What he was afraid of was not that Zi Xieching couldn't prove her identity. It wasn't too difficult to prove one's identity. The real problem was that once Zi Xieching revealed her identity, who knew what kind of storm it would cause in this world? Now, everything wasn't ready yet. At least, it wasn't a good time now. Zi Xieching gritted her teeth and said, "What do I have to be rash about?" Isn't it just to prove my identity? Is my identity so shameful? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Your identity isn't shameful, it's too shameful. Of course, to some people, Zi Xieching also seemed to belong to the category of shameful. That white-robed man looked at Zi Xieching with a hint of mockery at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Could it be that your identity is really earth-shattering?" It was obvious that he was trying to provoke him, but what he did was really too obvious. He didn't hide it at all, which made the provocation even more effective, at least to Zi Xieching. It was very effective and irresistible. Zi Xieching said lightly, "You don't have to provoke me. I've already decided to reveal my identity long ago, because I'm full of pride towards my identity." She flipped her palm, and a seal suddenly appeared in her palm, a seal only the size of a finger. But the moment the seal was taken out, it suddenly shone brightly and filled the air with purple gas, a vast aura that only a ruler could have spread out in a mighty manner. The seal suddenly grew in size by itself, instantly becoming the size of a human head. Zi Xieching held the seal in her hand. With a bang, the seal landed on the bridge. Suddenly, for large words appeared on the bridge deck. Ancient purple clouds. The three people opposite her were stunned when they saw the 4 words. They were suddenly stunned and took 3 steps back at the same time. They exclaimed, "Purple clouds, heaven's imperial jade seal." This seal was a sacred item of the purple clouds heavens, the purple clouds imperial jade seal that belonged exclusively to the purple clouds heavenly emperor, Zi Hao. Ever since Zi Hao died in battle, the whereabouts of this sacred item of the purple clouds heavens were unknown. But they never thought that it would appear here today. Who exactly are you? The 3 people looked at Zi Xieching with a different gaze. It was no longer disdainful like before. Instead, it was filled with respect and anticipation. The purple clouds heavenly emperor's imperial jade seal, other than himself, could only be used by the direct bloodline of the purple clouds heavens. If outsiders got their hands on it, it would at most be an ordinary seal. Only in the hands of Zi Hao and his family would it be able to unleash unparalleled power. Only then could they command the purple clouds and not dare to disobey. Zi Xieching took a deep breath and said quietly, "The purple clouds heavenly emperor, Zi Hao is my father." When she finally said, "The purple clouds heavenly emperor, Zi Hao is my father," in front of others, Zi Xieching's heart was filled with indescribable pride. Previously, Zi Xieching had always looked down on the second generation of the rich and powerful. But at this moment, Zi Xieching suddenly experienced that feeling. Pride, because I have a hero as my father, although he was no longer around in this world. As long as his name was mentioned, there would be no one who didn't know, no one who didn't know, and no one who didn't respect him. The purple clouds, heavenly emperor, Zi Hao is my father. However, the impact of this sentence was far beyond Zi Xieching's expectations. In an instant, the attitude of the 3 people opposite her changed. "Is this true?" Someone at the side asked. The man in white shouted angrily, "Shut up!" To be able to use the purple cloud's imperial jade seal with his own bloodline, if he is not the direct bloodline of the heavenly emperor, what else can he be? With such evidence, is there a need for other proof? You idiot! It is indeed the princess. The man in white's gaze became passionate and respectful. Looking at the dazzling purple firmament imperial jade seal, the 3 people in white knelt down and actually kowtowed respectfully. "Greetings to the senior heroes. Greetings to the heavenly emperor." The 3 of them looked solemn. "Please rest assured, your majesty. But as long as my brother is here, we will never let the extraterrestrial demons step into the heavenly imperial court." The reason why the 3 of them were so polite was not to pay respects to Zi Xieching, but to show the highest respect to the purple clouds heavenly emperor. Only when one came to the purple clouds heavens could one imagine the greatness of the purple clouds heavenly emperor. Sheching moved sideways to avoid them. She raised her father's imperial jade seal with one hand and accepted their kowtow. For a moment, her heart was filled with joy and sorrow, pride and sadness, pride and longing, all intertwined together. I am the daughter of the purple clouds, heavenly emperor. Even after 1,000,000 years, it still shone with boundless radiance, just like the purple cloud's imperial jade seal, which swept the world, was not covered in dust. Thank you for your kindness, Sheching said sadly. Sheching said sadly, I thought after so many years my father's name has long been forgotten by people. No, definitely not. The man in white stood up with a solemn expression and said solemnly, the name of His Majesty, the purple cloud heavenly emperor, will be remembered forever, even after another 10,000,000 years. The name of a hero must not be buried, and it will not be buried. Your Highness. The man in white stood up straight. Although he had already confirmed Sheching's identity and had paid his respects to the heavenly emperor of Shao, he still did not back down. Although your identity is already confirmed, it is precisely because of this all the more reason why you cannot enter. What did you say? Why? Sheching widened her eyes. What did he mean by not letting her in when she was not clear? Now that her identity was clear, she was still not allowed to enter. What was this? It's too dangerous inside. The man in white laughed bitterly. Past this bridge is the homeland of the purple clouds heavens, especially the 3,000 miles in front of the first bridge. There have been constant battles for hundreds of thousands of years. Chapter 2430. In these hundreds of thousands of years, the number of people who have died here, or the extraterrestrial demons, has exceeded at least 100 billion. The man in white took a deep breath. Even a high-level saint may die here at any time. Her Highness is of noble status, and she is also the only descendant of His Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor of Purple Clouds. We can't afford to lose her, so you can't go over. Sheching was really helpless. Before she revealed her identity, you guys wanted it. Now that she had one, you guys actually refused to let me go. Even though she knew that the people in front of her had good intentions, she still couldn't let it go. It's like this. Chu Yang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. With his many years of experience, he could tell that among the three people, this man in white was someone similar to Mo Tianji. At the very least, he was at Xia Danqiong's level, and the other two belonged to Dong Wushang and Jimo's character. Well, I don't care about anything. Anyway, there's someone who can make the decision. We just have to fight, so Chu Yang directly filtered out the other two people. He said to the man in white, It's like this. Her Highness is His Majesty's posthumous child. Well, there's a reason why His Majesty fought the extraterrestrial demons until his death. So His Majesty set the date of birth to hundreds of thousands of years later. Only recently did she know of her identity and origin. The man in white nodded. I understand. He sighed. Back then, purple clouds, heavens fought alone. It's a big mystery. His Majesty was able to make preparations in advance, which can be considered as preparing for a rainy day. I completely understand. Chu Yang had a whole new level of respect for him. This guy's IQ was really not low. This was probably what they meant by listening to the sound of the strings, wasn't it? So, about Her Highness's identity, Chu Yang said, This definitely needs to be kept a secret. The man in white nodded again. Please rest assured. Today's matter, including Her Highness's identity, will definitely not be leaked from the three of us. Chu Yang nodded. I believe in your promise. It's just that I mentioned earlier that Her Highness only knew of her identity recently, so she wanted to come to Purple Cloud's heavens. Not to. Understood. It's human nature. The man in white nodded in understanding and continued on Chu Yang's behalf. Your Highness isn't really here to participate in the battle, nor is she here to train, nor is she here to take back the Purple Cloud heavens. She's only here to pay homage to her ancestors, to see the place where her father fought in the past, and to see her own hometown. Chuyang nodded. You're absolutely right, so that's why we should let you go and fulfill your wish. The man in white nodded. I understand what you're saying, but we still can't let you pass. Chuyang couldn't help but get angry. He was so angry that his nose was crooked. Brother Ching has said so much, but it's purely a waste of saliva. Why are you like this? Why are you so unreasonable? It's not that I'm unreasonable, but if something happens to Her Highness, no one can bear the responsibility. The man in white said seriously, after crossing the first bridge, there are still 27,000 miles to go until we reach the Purple Imperial City. Back then, His Majesty the Celestial Emperor specially chose the location of the Purple Imperial City at the edge of the purple cloud heavens. Do you know how many heavenly demons we might encounter during this 27,000 miles journey? How many battles will we have to go through? What price will we have to pay? Let me tell you, for so many years, no one on our side has ever been able to kill their way to the Purple Imperial City. The man in white sighed deeply. How can we not understand Her Highness' feelings? Could it be that we are really that heartless? If it's possible, even if we have to risk our lives, we'll still escort Her Highness there. Even if all of us die, as long as we can ensure Her Highness' safety, we'll be happy to do it. We even more hope to let the heroic spirits of this land know that the bloodline of His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor they're loyal to, has returned safely. We even more hope that the heroic spirit of His Majesty, the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor, can accept the worship of his direct bloodline. This is tantamount to reuniting the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor and his daughter. We understand. The man in white sighed deeply. But the problem now is, we don't have the confidence, not at all. We don't even have the confidence to escort Her Highness to the old site of the Purple Imperial City safely. We don't even have the confidence to escort Her Highness back from the Purple Imperial City. Do you understand if I put it this way? Chuyang was completely silent. The other party's words were very straightforward, but completely irrefutable. It's human nature for Her Highness to be anxious to pay respects to her father. Besides, we've been fighting on this land for tens of thousands of years. Our feelings may not be much better than Her Highness' feelings right now. But it's precisely because of this that we can't bear any harm that Her Highness may suffer. Even if she loses a single strand of hair, to people like us, it's a great sin and a dereliction of duty. The man in white said seriously, We understand all of you, but we also hope that you can also understand us. Chuyang realized miserably that not only did he not manage to convince this man in white, he was about to be convinced by him instead. He seemed to have only felt this kind of feeling from Mo Tianji in the past. May I know your name? Chuyang asked seriously. Xianyuan. The man in white smiled. Xianyuan Changkong. Chuyang pondered for a moment and said, Xianyuan Changkong? A good name. Why do I seem to have heard this name before? Actually, due to the long history of this name, Chuyang had never heard of it at all. When the sword spirit first introduced it, it only introduced the names of the previous masters of the tribulation sword. It did not introduce the specific identities of the previous tribulations in detail. Therefore, Chuyang had never heard of this name before. But Chuyang still firmly believed that this person must be one of the previous tribulations. He frowned as if he was deep in thought. Xianyuan Changkong was obviously interested in his appearance. He said, You've heard of me. That's impossible, right? Our names have never spread outside the Heaven Imperial Court. Chuyang frowned and thought hard. Not in the Heaven Imperial Court. I think I've heard of it in my hometown. Really? But why can't I remember at this moment? Xianyuan Changkong's expression suddenly changed. He said somewhat excitedly, Your hometown? Where's your hometown? The other two people's faces also glowed red. They looked at Chuyang expectantly. Chuyang said indifferently, My hometown is in the Heaven Imperial Court. Have you heard of that place? This sentence was simply nonsense. But Chu Yang was afraid that if he directly pointed out the key point, the misunderstandings between the previous masters of the tribulations, sword and tribulations, had not been resolved yet. He was afraid that it would cause unnecessary trouble. For example, the person he just met, so it was necessary to beat around the bush, even if the way was quite melodramatic. But so what if it was melodramatic? As long as it was effective. Heaven Imperial Court. The three people shouted at the same time. The man in white was muttering in a low voice, but the other two were simply excited. You're all people who ascended from the Heaven Imperial Court? It's the two of you. These two were, of course, referring to Chu Yang and Mo Qingguo. Yes. Chu Yang nodded honestly. I'm from the lower 3 heavens of the Heaven Imperial Court. My mother is from the martial arts clans of the lower 3 heavens of the Heaven Imperial Court. Fellow countrymen. The 2 men in gold almost shed tears. They grabbed Chu Yang's hand and looked fervent. So we're from the same hometown. Brother, we were originally from the Heaven Imperial Court. Such a coincidence. Chu Yang's face was full of surprise, even more pretentious. Uft. Cough. Mo Qingguo almost couldn't hold back her laughter. She hurriedly covered her mouth and pretended to cough, but it was very fake. How's the Heaven Imperial Court now? What's it like now? The 2 men in gold surrounded Chu Yang and asked urgently. The man in white was a little helpless about this, but he didn't stop them. His face was still calm, but he also perked up his ears to listen. A single person was actually chatting on the first bridge. As they chatted, the 3 people invited them warmly. Come. Let's go to our place and have a good chat. Sigh. I haven't been back to the Heaven Imperial Court for tens of thousands of years. I really miss home. They actually led the 3 people forward, just like that. Zi Xieching followed beside Chu Yang with a straight face. She only felt that her heart was so ridiculous that she wanted to laugh. The other party was clearly so determined just now. But the mention of the Heaven Imperial Court completely changed their minds. They actually allowed them to enter their tent, although there was still a possibility that they would be politely sent out after catching up. After all, there was already a buffer. To Zi Xieching and Chu Yang, with this buffer, it was equivalent to a big step forward. With a good start, perhaps the rest of the matters would be much easier to handle. Chu Yang and the other 2 followed the 3 people of the previous generation and walked forward for about 1,000 feet. Suddenly, their field of vision widened a lot. They realized that the bridge here actually extended out horizontally by a large section, and on the extra section of the bridge there stood a fortress. There was only a passageway below this fortress. Above the passageway, there were actually rooms. Chu Yang couldn't help but feel dizzy. Such a design was really fucking original and unique, a work of the gods. No matter who wanted to pass through here, the people here only needed to wait at ease. When there was nothing to do, they could even sleep, rest, or practice martial arts in their rooms. When there was something to do, they could just come down and hold the fort. The only requirement was that you were a martial artist and could fly, and that was enough. Chapter 2431. However, to build such a house in this area, it seemed that the difficulty was also not ordinary. First of all, divine senses could not be used here at all. It was even more impossible to fly here and there. One could only rely on the most primitive lightness techniques to move around here. In order to build such a magnificent building, besides the huge amount of work involved, who knew how much risk they would have to take? Looking at Chu Yang's expression, the white-robed man, Xian Yuan Changkong, laughed heartily. We built this house step by step. There are people here all year round. Even if we don't take turns to be on duty, there will still be people standing here alone. Therefore, we might as well build this house. We changed from 1 person to 1 person to 1 person to 3 people to 1 person so that we can be companions and chat with each other to get rid of loneliness. That's really a big deal. Chu Yang clicked his tongue in wonder. Building such a house is really difficult. I'm afraid that it's not an exaggeration to say that it's a life or death situation. If one were to accidentally fall down, I really don't know where to look for him." Xianyuan Changkong smiled reservedly. "Everyone has been circling between life and death all year round. This little bit of danger is nothing to be afraid of. Actually, the original intention of building this house is to make life easier for everyone in the future. There's no need to give anything in return. We've lived in the land for a long time, and practice makes perfect. Danger can hardly be considered as danger," Chu Yang said sincerely. "I'm saying that you're a bunch of desperados." The two people at the side patted Chu Yang's shoulder and laughed. "Well said, we're desperados." They increasingly felt that this guy's words were really to their liking. Xianyuan Changkong's face was also filled with joy. However, he was also doubtful in his heart. This princess of the purple cloud heavens was the real deal. If she was not a direct descendant of the purple cloud heavenly emperor, she would definitely not be able to activate the purple cloud heavenly emperor's purple cloud tower. There was no need to doubt this point. As for the beautiful lady beside her, she was also very simple and honest. Her temperament would definitely not be crooked. These two ladies could be completely trusted. However, this black-robed man was really somewhat unfathomable. He looked young and tender, but in fact he was full of inner qualities. It was as if his whole body naturally carried a kind of subduing aura. It was a feeling of déjà vu. It was a pity that he couldn't use his divine sense to observe carefully here. Otherwise, with his eyesight, he would have been able to see some clues. At the very least, he would be able to find out how high this guy's cultivation was. In addition, there was something else that they didn't understand. He had deliberately become friends with his two brothers in just a few words. The atmosphere was joyous and harmonious. Ever since that incident, these two brothers had always been silent, even in the face of Emperor Donghuang's occasional visits. Most of them didn't say a word. How did I get along so well with this guy today? This is really strange. If that was all there was to it, then it would have been fine. After all, they were just looking at each other. This was completely unreasonable. However, what was even stranger was that even though he knew that Chu Yang was deliberately welcoming the three of them, he still didn't feel any disgust towards him. Instead, he was happy to spend more time with him. Wasn't this an extremely strange thing? Xianyuan Changkong faintly had a thought in his heart. This black-robed man who calls himself Chu Yang seems to be very experienced in dealing with people like me. But how is this possible? He is only a few years old. I have tens of thousands of years of cultivation. My temperament has been tempered. How can I be seen through so easily? With a belly full of doubts, he finally came to the room. The burly man in gold actually took the initiative to make tea. It's rare that fellow countrymen from my hometown come over. I have to take out my fifth brother's precious tea for everyone to taste. Xianyuan Changkong was stunned again. This guy actually doesn't treat this black-robed man as an outsider. You must know that I have spent a lot of effort to accumulate that tea. Usually, only these few brothers can drink it. Now that this black-robed man has come, the elder actually went to take it directly. This display of goodwill is too obvious. No need. Chu Yang laughed. Dear brothers, I think you have been away from the heavenly layer for a long time. I have not ascended for a long time. Before I ascended, I was afraid that I would never be able to drink the tea of my hometown again, so I really brought a lot of tea specialties from the heavenly layer continent. Let's drink it today and try it to comfort everyone's homesickness. Are you serious? The three of them raised their heads at the same time, their eyes shining. Even Xianyuan Changkong, who had always been profound and wise, had his eyes shining when he heard this. There was a hint of covetousness in his eyes. When these few people first came here, the whole process was full of bafflement. They didn't bring anything over. To put it bluntly, even if they wanted to find something to prove that they were indeed from the heavenly layer continent, they probably wouldn't be able to find it. This guy actually thought of bringing tea up in advance. What kind of explanation is this? Xianyuan Changkong immediately felt relieved. This guy probably ascended normally. He is different from us. As long as he has a space tool with a large capacity, it is reasonable for him to bring more things other than martial arts. Not only did Chuyang have tea in his tribulation space, but they were all of the best quality. Ever since he saw that the elder ancestor Chu Xiaoxin liked tea so much, Chuyang also fell in love with the stuff. Before he ascended, he had bought a lot of tea. All the famous tea in the heavenly layer was available. It was quite extravagant. When Chuyang took out a packet of tea, he gathered the water vapor and boiled the tea. When the tea fragrance spread out, the dark green tea rolled back and forth in the teacup. An indescribable and wonderful tea fragrance rose in spirals. Just like that, the three people opposite him sniffed together, sniffing the long-awaited taste of their hometown. Their actions were a little comical, but Chuyang and the other two only felt a heartfelt bitterness in their hearts. Such heroic figures, just for one belief, had to stay here or never return to their hometown for the rest of their lives. Wasn't this also a kind of great cruelty? The three of them smelled the tea fragrance. At first, they were intoxicated, but gradually they couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. They held up the teacup with infinite care. Looking at the tea in the cup, they were actually speechless for a moment. After a long, long time, the 2 tears in the eyes of the burly man in gold on the left dripped onto the green tea, making 2 ding-dong sounds. Although the sound was very soft, how could it escape everyone's ears? The burly man forced a smile and said, "The tea is really too hot. The dense steam is rising. It's so hot that it's making my tears come out." This sentence was such an inappropriate excuse, but it made the other 2 nod repeatedly, expressing their agreement. The scene in front of them was originally an extremely comical situation. A burly man holding a cup of tea and crying. But Emo Chingu and the others didn't find it funny at all. Instead, their noses turned sour and their eyes were watery. They were almost about to cry. Xianyuan Changkong held the teacup, raised his head, closed his eyes, and sighed deeply. "Yes, it's the tea of my hometown, the tea of the heavenly layer continent. I will never forget this taste in my life. I originally thought that I had already forgotten it." Chuyang's heart ached. When he reached out again, there was already a space ring in his hand. He passed it to Xianyuan Changkong. There was a look of understanding in Xianyuan Changkong's eyes, but his tone was still filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe that such a surprise would actually happen to him. "This is the tea of our hometown. Naturally, it should be drunk by the people of our hometown." Chuyang took a deep breath. "When I ascended to Heaven Imperial City, I brought a lot, except for the part that my mother made for me. I won't take out the rest for you. I collected the rest myself. I'll give them to all of you. In the future, on this purple cloud battlefield, when you're free from battle, feel the taste of our hometown. When you're away from your hometown, you miss the taste of your hometown the most." Xianyuan Changkong suddenly stood up, his eyes red. He received the space ring with both hands carefully and said in an unusually solemn manner, "Thank you so much. We accept your kind intentions." The other 2 burly men in gold looked excited, gratified, and a little sad. Looking at the ring, they asked longingly, "How much is inside? How many times is it enough to drink?" It's more or less a brother's kind intentions. How much do you care? Even if you can only drink it once, isn't it a great favor? This is the tea of our hometown. No matter how many purple crystals you have, where can you buy it? Xianyuan Changkong glared at his 2 brothers, feeling very embarrassed. These 2 are too greedy tea. How much of this thing can you bring with you? At most, bringing a few kilograms is already very good, right? You said that you're giving it all to us. But why didn't you keep half? These 2 are really useless. No matter how scheming you are, how much you want to know, you have to wait for them to leave and close the door before you look. You just have to shout it out in front of them you've really lost the face of all of us brothers. There's really not much tea in here. It's really not enough to take out. Chu Yang smiled and said, at most it's less than 1,000 kilograms. 2,000 kilograms. Wow. The three of them exclaimed at the same time. Xianyuan Changkong was also one of those who exclaimed, 2,000 kilograms of tea. What the heck? How big of a figure is this? For these people, even 1 or 2 taels of tea was a rare surprise. That was just wishful thinking. But now they had 1,000 kilograms. It was simply like a pauper who was so poor that he couldn't even afford to drink noodles, suddenly having a mountain of gold. They instantly became nouveau riche. Wow! When they opened the ring and saw the actual inventory inside, the 2 burly men in gold couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The taste of happiness instantly spread through their bodies. There's really so much. This isn't a dream, right? Chapter 2432. I won't say anything more. I'll take 0.5 kilogram of it and put it on my bed to drink slowly. The golden-robed man danced with joy. He was so excited that his face was flushed. Drink a cup in the morning. Drink a cup before going to bed at night. Xianyuan Changkong was also a little excited, but he still pretended to be calm and said disdainfully, Can you tell the difference between morning and night in this white fog? Drink a cup in the morning. Drink a cup in the evening. You're really good. The golden-robed man was immediately defeated. With these teas as a foundation, the relationship between Chu Yang and these 3 people warmed up again, leveled up, explosive, from strangers to acquaintances. It only took 0.5 cup of tea's time. It was as if they were sitting on a rocket to the point where they could call each other brothers. Brother! The golden-robed man on the left slapped Chu Yang's left shoulder. You're really good. I, Yen Fei, recognize you as my brother. Thank you. Ha ha ha. Such good tea. Brother. The golden-robed man on the right slapped Chu Yang's right shoulder. Not bad. I, Yang Zong, won't say thank you to you. I've put everything aside in my heart. Chu Yang was caught off guard by the 2 big slaps. So he fell on his butt with a crashing sound. Although his body could withstand the tremendous force, the chair he was sitting on couldn't withstand it, so he still sat on the ground. Someone who's but touched the cold ground couldn't help but have black lines on his forehead. Ha ha ha. Seeing Chu Yang's embarrassing situation, everyone laughed heartily. The 2 girls laughed especially, like flowers trembling. Suddenly, there was no longer any sense of alienation between everyone. Brother, tell us quickly, what is Chongtian like now? The 3 people asked at the same time. Chongtian continent, this story is really long. Chu Yang began to talk tirelessly. The 3 people listened with great interest. He described the landscape of the mountains and rivers, described the geography of the people, described the customs of the people. Chu Yang's mouth flowed like a river, and he talked endlessly, as if he could go on forever. The 3 people listened with great interest from the beginning. Slowly, he lost interest and even felt a little resentful, because this guy was only describing this. He didn't mention anything about the people, geography, or local customs of the Chongtian continent. Or rather, he didn't mention anything that the 3 of them really wanted to hear. Even, there was no implication at all. Xianyuan Changkong was still able to maintain his composure. Although his face was gloomy, he was still listening attentively. However, Yen Fei and Yang Zong could no longer hold it in. After hesitating for a long while, Yen Fei finally stammered. It was as if he was sitting on a hedgehog. He said uncomfortably, Well, apart from these, are there any other heroic deeds? Or the great war of the century heroes? Hero? Are you talking about those legends and myths? Chu Yang's face was full of confusion. Most of those are just exaggerations. What's there to talk about? Do you want to hear about this? Yen Fei was dumbfounded and could not help but swallow his saliva. However, he did not dare to say what he really wanted to say. He could only look at Xianyuan Changkong. When we were together, there would be legends and legends. There are also some legends. Although they're a little exaggerated, they're not too outrageous. Under the urging of his two brothers, Xianyuan Changkong finally opened his mouth unwillingly. However, the moment he opened his mouth, his originally clear voice became a little hoarse, and he even pretended to cough. At that time, we still remember. At that time, and Xianyuan Changkong said strenuously, and the legend of Tribulation, Sword Master, and Brother Tribulation. Those people might not be legends and legends, but they were always the best of the best. I wonder if you've heard of any similar legends? When he said this, the three of them looked at Chu Yang with burning eyes. Their eyes, apart from unlimited anticipation, there was also unlimited nervousness, although they were deceived. Although they were deceived for a lifetime. Although they were harmed and almost used to death in the end. However, in the end, they still wanted to know some things. For example, how was their big brother, who had caused their brothers' souls to scatter in the martial world? But were there any legends about him? In this battlefield, many of the warriors who were fighting against the heavenly demons were the same kind of people as their brothers. They knew each other's identities, but there was basically no deep communication, especially when it came to the unbearable past. No one was willing to talk about it. The past was unbearable to recall, but they still wanted to know if their old friends were still alive. Now, Chu Yang in front of them was a person who had ascended. He should be different from the other people who came from the heavenly layer. They didn't know the inside story of tribulation, but they had the courage to ask about it. But, of course, they didn't expect that they would accidentally find the person they were looking for. They didn't dare to ask about the previous tribulation. Instead, they asked about the current tribulation, Sword Master. You're asking about this. You're talking about this. Chu Yang's face showed a sorrowful expression. He said, "This matter is really too tragic. I did deliberately avoid this topic at first. When it comes to the legends and legends of our heavenly layer, we can't skip the legend of tribulation. But this legend is really too tragic, so I've been avoiding this tragic question. But I didn't expect you guys to take the initiative to ask this question." Sigh. Tragic? Too tragic? What do you mean? The three of them sat up straight at the same time, their eyes wide open. That matter. That person wouldn't have spread it out himself, right? He should be glorious. How could he be so tragic? And it seems like the whole world knows about it? Now, in the heavenly layer continent, almost everyone knows about it, but everyone has the same attitude, which is to keep it a secret, because every time they talk about it, they feel their hearts ache. In the heavenly layer imperial court, His Majesty Zi Hao, the heavenly emperor of Purple Cloud, is recognized by everyone as a hero. But in the heavenly layer continent, the only legend that is recognized by everyone is the legend of tribulation. Chu Yang sighed deeply, his voice full of emotion. What? Heartache? Legend? Hurry up and tell us in detail. What happened? The three of them felt that their hearts were about to jump out of their throats. They couldn't wait to ask. It's a long story. If you didn't ask, I really didn't want to talk about it again. Such a peerless hero, died so tragically. Even his body died and his Tao disappeared, his soul scattered. Chu Yang sighed again and again. The three of them panted heavily at the same time. Could it be that he was talking about us? Could it be that what happened back then was already known to the whole world? Brother, please tell us in detail. What is it that could shake the entire heavenly layer? Xianyuan Changkong could tell that Chu Yang didn't want to talk about it, so he suddenly stood up and bowed. Then he changed the topic and said seriously, "This matter is very important to us. Please." Yan Fei and Yang Zong asked at the same time. "All right," Chu Yang said solemnly, "heroes can't be wronged forever. Since you said that this matter is related to you, I'll say it again. But you have to be patient. I'll tell you the whole story in detail. Don't worry, we'll definitely be patient." The three of them nodded hurriedly. "We'll be very patient." Speaking of this matter, I'll have to start from the tribulation, Sword Master. Chu Yang said. He was interrupted by Yen Fei. Ah? The tribulation, Sword Master? The tribulation, Sword Master, is already at the tribulation, Sword Master? Shut up. Xianyuan Changkong and Yang Zong looked at Yen Fei fiercely and reprimanded him at the same time. Yen Fei sat down embarrassedly and scratched his head. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Shut up. The two of them shouted at the same time. Stop and listen carefully. If you say one more word, get out. Yen Fei lowered his head and didn't say anything. Continue. The two of them turned to look at Chu Yang at the same time. The tribulation, Sword Master of the first generation, came from a very ordinary sect in the lower 3 heavens. He was a handsome young man. When he was only 15 years old, he already became the tribulation, Sword Master of the first generation. Moreover, he was smart, handsome, and elegant. He was really a dragon among men, a peerless talent in the heavenly layer. Chu Yang began to narrate. After hearing the series of praises, the three of them thought, what's so strange about this? The previous tribulation Sword Masters were all like this. Otherwise, how could they win the hearts of the people? This tribulation, Sword Master of the first generation, brought his brothers, and started from the lower 3 heavens, and so. He turned the tide and saved the day. His loyal heart shone brightly in the sun and the moon, and his spirit shone brightly in the stars. Chu Yang's voice softly described the story that was slightly exaggerated with artistic embellishment. Anyway, the main character of the story was simply a perfect person who was loved by everyone. Mo Qinggu leaned her head in Zi Xieching's arms, as if she had already fallen asleep. Zi Xieching also buried her face in Mo Qinggu's hair. The two of them were trying their best to control their emotions, but the two of them were already having a stomachache from holding it in. They really had never seen such a shameless and despicable person before. The two girls didn't dare to raise their heads. Once they raised their heads, they wouldn't be able to control the smile on their faces. In fact, they would be exposed on the spot. So, the tribulation Sword Master came to the upper 3 heavens. This tribulation Sword Master was so chivalrous, courageous, righteous, upright, loyal, so. Then he rushed to the upper 3 heavens. Chapter 24:33. What exactly happened? The three of them listened attentively, although the things that Chu Yang said might be a little exaggerated. But to them, they still felt that it was reasonable. My brothers were probably like this back then. After this tribulation, Sword Master rushed up to the upper 3 heavens. He was surprised to find that the law enforcement officers, who were supposed to be his greatest support, were now completely opposing him. When the identity of the tribulation Sword Master was exposed, the law enforcement officers and Dharma Supreme of the upper 3 heavens became even more aggressive. They directly mobilized the power of the whole world to go against the tribulation Sword Master. For a time, the tribulation Sword Master was basically going against the whole world, and the situation was very unfavorable. Chu Yang's voice was heavy. What's going on? How is this possible? The three of them were confused as well. The law enforcers have always been the biggest support for the master of the Calamity Sword. No matter when, as long as this force exists, it's the personal force of the master of the Calamity Sword. Why are they against the master of the Calamity Sword? Something must have gone wrong. Yes, something must have gone wrong. Chu Yang sighed. After many investigations, this first-generation tribulation Sword Master discovered to his surprise that this Dharma Supreme, who is the head of the law enforcement officers, not only has a superb cultivation, he is also extraordinarily intelligent. What shocked him even more was this Dharma Supreme actually knows everything about the Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation Brother. He even knows about the Tribulation Sword technique and those elixirs and pills. It's the heavy elixir, Yen Fei said angrily. He really couldn't stand the fact that this guy's story was full of mistakes. Yes, 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 it's that heavy elixir. In any case, it's an extremely miraculous elixir. Chu Yang readily accepted her advice. He immediately corrected himself. Let's not talk about these details. Hurry up and tell us what's going on. Under normal circumstances, only the tribulation sword master himself knows these things. How did others know? Especially an outsider like the Dharma Supreme? Xianyuan Changkong couldn't understand. This mystery lasted until the end. It was only during the final battle that the truth was finally revealed. Chu Yang's voice was heavy. This Dharma Supreme is actually one of the previous tribulations, and he's the most irreplaceable think tank. What? The three of them were shocked. They were completely shocked to the extreme. They didn't expect such a strange thing to happen. But Chu Yang immediately stopped talking, because he realized that there was a loophole in his story that should not have appeared. The fact that the Dharma Supreme's true body was Diwu Cho-chang. Chu Yang originally did not intend to announce it to the public. Regarding the Dharma Supreme's mental journey, Chu Yang had always felt very complicated, but it was undeniable that there was also a trace of admiration and a trace of pity. Even though he had done a lot of bad things, and even though he had planned to purge the entire world in the end, but Chu Yang still didn't want to speak ill of him. But now, in a moment of carelessness, he had revealed half of the truth. Chu Yang suddenly stopped talking. The three of them stood up anxiously at the same time. What happened next? What happened after that? What are you trying to do now? How could that Dharma Supreme be the brains of the previous tribulation? How can he go back? What the hell is going on? Why don't you continue? The three of them were so worried that they were about to go crazy. Seeing that they were about to reach the critical moment, this guy actually stopped talking. Wouldn't this make them depressed to death? Yan Fei jumped up and down. He was so anxious that he scratched his head. Say it, little ancestor. Don't tell me that at such a moment you're going to say, what will happen next time? Then I'll definitely suffocate to death. I'm actually choosing my words carefully. I'll continue. Chu Yang had already made up his mind. He continued, and the reason why this former tribulation brother appeared here is to avenge his brothers. Avenge? You mean avenge? The three of them exclaimed at the same time. Because the previous generation of tribulation brothers actually died in the hands of the tribulation sword master. Chu Yang said, so this tribulation brain, at the last moment, he desperately escaped from a place that was said to be mending the heavens. Then he used all his schemes and tricks. He concealed his identity and became the head of the law enforcement officers, the Dharma Supreme. Everything he did was actually to find his elder brother, the tribulation sword master of his generation, and ask him personally, why? Why? The three of them murmured absent-mindedly, yes, why? These three words we also want to ask all the time. But where can we go to ask? But when this brain came back to the world, thousands of years had already passed. In the heavenly realm, that's a very long time. But in the martial world, there's no longer any legend of this tribulation sword master. Chu Yang said, that's impossible. That's impossible. The three of them jumped up at the same time. Although they didn't know who this previous generation tribulation boss was and what kind of character he had. But how could a person who could become the tribulation sword master and lead the tribulation brothers to the peak of the heavenly realm be an ordinary person? How could a person who could achieve such a feat become a nobody? Not to mention other things. All the brothers knew very well what kind of person their boss was back then. He was definitely a man of great talent and vision, unparalleled intelligence, and unparalleled wisdom. He had exhausted all his schemes to achieve all these. Next, even if he wanted to dominate the martial world, it wouldn't be difficult for him. How could he be a nobody? It's a pity that this is the truth, an indisputable truth. Chu Yang said, that's not right. Xianyuan Changkong frowned deeply. Even if the Tribulation Swordmaster is no longer around, his clan must still be around. How could they disappear? Chu Yang frowned. Indeed, they didn't. Have you seen the previous Tribulation Swordmaster's clan when you were around? I think I've only seen the Tribulation clan. Hearing this, the three of them were stunned. That's right, they fought every day back then, but they really didn't come into contact with any of the Tribulation Swordmaster's clan. If it was really like back then, how could the Tribulation Swordmaster not have a foundation to pass down his legacy? The three of them fell into deep thought. This seems like there's a problem. Chu Yang said solemnly, "Let me continue." Unable to find a way to ask, that Tribulation strategist found another way and thought of ways to become a Dharma Supreme. He used the power of a Dharma Supreme to deal with the next Tribulation Sword Master who might appear. Finally, he waited. That battle wiped out all the clans in the three heavens on the heavenly level continent. Even all the martial artists in the heavenly level continent were affected. That was really an earth-shattering battle of the century, and it lasted for a long time. I can imagine. Xianyuan Chongkong and the other two suddenly felt their blood boiling. There was a brother who was determined to go back and take revenge. In order to avenge his dead brothers and seek justice from the destined Tribulation Swordmaster, he didn't hesitate to slaughter the world and bathe the heavenly level continent in blood. Although this didn't happen to them, just thinking about it made them so excited that their scalps tingled. And it was under such high pressure that the Tribulation Swordmaster of the first generation struggled bitterly and actually broke through the last stage. Thus, he knew the true mission of the Tribulation Sword. At the same time, he also knew the tragedy behind all this. He knew the whole truth. Truth? What truth? The three of them asked at the same time. Yes, it's the truth. Chu Yang nodded slowly and said with a hint of sorrow, "The truth is the mission of the Tribulation Sword." The mission of the Tribulation Sword? What does the truth have to do with the Tribulation Sword? The three of them asked one after another, their eyes widening. How can it not have anything to do with it? It's very important. The hidden mission of the Tribulation Sword is to fight the extraterrestrial demons. Chu Yang said bleakly, the Tribulation Swordmaster only knew in the end. The so-called gathering of the Tribulation Swordmasters was actually a selection. It was to choose the true candidate to fight against the extraterrestrial demons and quell the demons. He looked at the three of them and said, "Just like all of you, coming to the heavenly level imperial court, coming to the purple cloud heavens, guarding this fallen area and fighting endlessly." The breathing of the three of them became hurried in an instant. At the same time, she felt that her heart was suddenly lifted, as if it was being pulled out, and she almost couldn't breathe. Actually, it's like this. Chu Yang repeated what he had said to Wu Jueqingbak, then in detail. He said, because the Calamity Sword had never found a person who was truly qualified to inherit its legacy, it fell into a cycle of reincarnation again and again. While the previous masters of the Calamity Sword did not meet the requirements themselves, their brothers had already fulfilled the conditions. However, he himself did not have enough strength to go up, and his brothers also could not go up, so he could only choose to sacrifice himself. Let his brothers go to the destined place of the Tribulation Brothers to fight against the extraterrestrial demons, so the so-called Tribulation, mending the heavens, wasn't to mend the hole in the sky, nor was it to extend the time limit for the heavenly calamity that was about to collapse. It was to quell the purple cloud heavens. Chu Yang said slowly, but the three of them were already in a daze. Their eyes were blank and lifeless. Chapter 24:34. Chu Yang's gaze was fixed on their faces. The three of them were completely unaware of this and continued to sit there in a daze. Golden robes. The sudden flash of golden light when the eyes were operating, the golden light from the bones when the enemy slashed his body. An almost indestructible body. Was this the so-called immortal golden body? The minds of the three of them were churning like a tsunami. After the truth was revealed that Dharma Supreme, who was also the previous tribulation, was deeply regretful. In the end, he perished together with an extraterrestrial demon that had infiltrated the Double Heavens continent. If it wasn't for his sacrifice, the Double Heavens continent would have fallen into the ravages of that extraterrestrial demon. Chuyang sighed emotionally. That's not right. It doesn't make sense at all. Xianyuan Changkong suddenly raised his head and looked at Chuyang fiercely. Even so, those previous tribulation sword masters didn't have to die. Reality is so cruel. If they didn't die, his brothers were destined to not be able to pass through that passageway. Chuyang said quietly they had to sacrifice their physical bodies, souls, and even the fate of their entire family to pour into that hole. In fact, when he killed his brothers with his own hands and used the most despicable words to provoke them, making them hate him, he was already dead. The one who was alive was actually just a walking corpse. After he collected the bodies of his brothers and buried them, at the latest, when they were halfway through the passageway, he would also throw his own body into the passageway to complete the protection and construction of the last part of the journey. If he didn't do that, everyone's souls would only disperse in that passageway. Not only would they not be able to attain the immortal golden body, but they would all die in there and never be able to come out. The three of them sat there and listened in a daze. For a moment, the three of them seemed to have become 3 wooden statues. Their eyes were extremely lifeless. So this was the truth back then? We misunderstood Big Brother? Wronged Big Brother? In the silence, only Xianyuan Changkong's voice could be heard asking subconsciously, then, Big Brother's family? When we left, the richest land on the continent was clearly inherited by Boss's family, even if Boss is no longer around. Shouldn't his family have inherited the land from generation to generation? I don't know about that. I only know that every generation of tribulation masters would establish a huge family and enjoy glory for tens of thousands of years. However, there has never been a legend of a descendant of the tribulation sword master. Not even one. Chuyang smiled bitterly. Oh, right, there's only one exception. After the 8th generation tribulation, Sword Master disappeared. His family also disappeared soon after. Only his younger brother and his younger sister-in-law's family were left. But this family was destroyed in the hands of Brother Tribulation's descendants. There's only Brother Tribulation's big clan in the world. There's never been a 10th super clan. Ka-ka. The 3 people on the other side were gritting their teeth. Tears welled up in her eyes. Suddenly, boom! Yan Fei slapped on the table and yelled, "Those ungrateful bastards! How could they? How could they? How could they? How could they?" Xianyuan Changkong sniffed. His eyes were completely red, and his chest was still heaving up and down rapidly. However, he brazenly raised his head and locked his cold gaze on Chuyang. "I don't believe what you're saying. How can these things be known by everyone in the heavenly layer continent? If what you've said is true, then it's undoubtedly top secret information. How do you know about it?" Chuyang sighed deeply and said, "Your suspicions are very reasonable. What I just said is indeed not something that everyone knows. It is indeed an absolute secret." He smiled and said, "But I know it. Moreover, I know it completely." "Why? Give me a reason." Xianyuan Changkong's sharp eyes looked at Chuyang. Chuyang pulled Mo Qingwu over and smiled. "Because my wife's brother is one of the Tribulation Brothers, and he's the brains of the Tribulation Brothers." Mo Qingwu exclaimed and looked at Chuyang. Xianyuan Changkong looked at Mo Qingwu and finally nodded slowly. Next, he didn't ask Chuyang. Instead, he asked Mo Qingwu a few inconspicuous but crucial questions. However, these questions weren't a problem for Mo Qingwu, who was Tribulation's brainchild's younger sister. They were things that she had experienced personally, so she just told them the truth. Moreover, Xianyuan Changkong would never dream that this brainchild's younger sister was actually one of the Tribulations, a female Tribulation that had never been seen before. and she was the wife of the Tribulation, Sword Master. It could be said that this brainchild's younger sister could answer the questions that Tribulation's brainchild couldn't answer, let alone some ordinary things. After asking a few crucial questions in a row and being answered by Mo Qingwu fluently, Xianyuan Changkong finally gave up. He sat down in a daze, as if his spirit was suddenly sucked out. The other two, Yan Fei and Yang Zong, were already dumbfounded. In front of Chu Yang and the other two, it was obvious that the three of them were trying hard to restrain themselves. However, their breathing became heavier and heavier. Finally, swoosh, 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 a few lines of hot tears flowed down the three brothers' cheeks. They didn't say anything. They just sat there in a daze, crying in a daze. They didn't make any sound, but it was as if they were dead. Smack! Yan Fei slapped his own face hard and scolded, "Yan Fei, you're a bastard!" This slap was so hard that his face swelled up instantly. Yang Zong also raised his hand, wanting to hit himself. However, after thinking for a while, he suddenly slapped Xianyuan Changkong's face hard. Boom! Xianyuan Changkong was sent flying. Yang Zong suddenly stood up and scolded, "What did I say back then? Fuck, it's you bastards who insisted that you were framed. Fuck, where did you get so many delusions of being framed? At that time, I said that maybe Big Brother had his reasons. What did you say?" As he spoke, he suddenly burst into tears. He slapped his own face and cried, "Now you've hated Big Brother for tens of thousands of years. You've scolded Big Brother for tens of thousands of years. Do you feel good now? When you die in the future, how can you face Big Brother in the afterlife? Do you still have any face left?" He suddenly roared like a thunderbolt. Xianyuan Changkong fell to the ground, as if he couldn't stand up anymore. Tears flowed down his face as he said painfully, "Yes, I was wrong. We were all wrong." Yan Fei howled and cried. Chapter 2435. Facing the situation in front of him, Chu Yang heaved a deep sigh. This time, when he spoke of the past, he purposely spoke in a joking tone, hoping to make the matter as light as possible. But to these iron-blooded men, the truth of the matter was still too heavy for their lives to bear. Originally, Chu Yang didn't think of saying the cruelest thing all at once. But now he changed his mind. Any concealment would be a great harm to such brothers. Trying to conceal the truth would only lead to more serious consequences. They already had the power and the right to know the truth, even if the truth was so hard to accept. Not only did they need the truth, but the dead also needed justice. The crying of the three gradually stopped, but their bodies were still trembling, slightly. They were still grieving and still unable to accept it. But in front of outsiders, they only lost their composure for a moment before regaining their emotions. Blood flowed out from the corner of Xianyuan Changkong's mouth. That was an internal injury caused by the backlash of using his own cultivation to suppress the grief in his heart. However, he ignored his injuries and forced himself to take a deep breath. This breath seemed to have sucked in a lot of the surrounding white fog into his stomach. It seemed to have buried all the grief and bitterness deep in his heart. "Brother Chu, our hearts are in a mess." Xianyuan Changkong took a deep breath and said word by word, "The three of you, please take a rest for the time being. Let us sort out our emotions carefully before we continue our conversation." Chu Yang stood up. He said, "Understood, understood. This is what we should do." Xianyuan Changkong smiled bitterly and said, "The three of you go out and turn left. There's another room over there. The facilities are rather simple and crude. I'm sorry to have neglected your highness, but now we can't suppress the emotions in our hearts. It's really inappropriate for us to receive more distinguished guests." He tried hard to control himself and said to Zi Xieqing, "Your highness, please forgive us." Zi Xieqing nodded silently and said softly, "From your reactions, I can tell that you're probably the famous brothers of the previous generation. The Sword Master got what he wanted. His wish was fulfilled early. Such a sacrifice should be within his calculations. But I believe it more. No matter what, his spirit in heaven wouldn't want to see his brothers hurt and grieving. She paused for a moment and deliberated for a long time. Finally, she didn't continue speaking and held Mo Qingwu's arm. He followed Chuyang out. The three figures gradually disappeared. Xianyuan Changkong sat on the chair in a daze, as if he had completely lost consciousness. After a long time, she finally let out a soft sigh. With this sigh, the tears that she had been holding back burst out of her eyes once again. After Chuyang and the others left, the three of them sat quietly on the chairs and thought about the past. She quietly wept, other than the sound of her tears dripping onto the ground. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Outside, on the bridge that led to where they came from, white fog filled the air and drifted back and forth. In this kind of white fog, nothing could be seen clearly. It was hazy. This white fog had existed for an unknown amount of time. It seemed that ever since the double celestial palace and the purple cloud heavens came into existence, the fog had always existed here. Perhaps in the Ming Dynasty or the future, it would continue to exist forever. Isn't it just like everything else in the world? No one could see what was on the other side of the fog of life. Chuyang, Mo Qingwu, and Zi Xieching sat silently in the room on the other side, facing each other in silence. Right now, they really had nothing to say. In the face of such a situation, they could neither advise nor not advise. But they had to say that things had changed with the passage of time. Heroes couldn't be wronged, and comradeship couldn't be erased. But such a truth brought great sorrow to the survivors. It hurt even more. Chuyang looked up to the sky and sighed. He murmured, "How can everything in the world be perfect?" Zi Xieching sighed and said softly, "How can everything in the world go according to one's wishes? Everyone knows how to reason. But when it comes to it, how many people can be exempted?" Mo Qingwu also sighed softly and said in a daze, "If the tribulation sword master that the elders followed was still alive, that would be the best." Chuyang and Zi Xieching sighed at the same time. Still alive, is it possible? Is it possible? Chuyang asked himself in his heart. Suddenly, a dejected sigh came from outside. That was Xianyuan Changkong's voice. At this moment, Xianyuan Changkong and the other two had already walked out of the room. They sat down side by side on this extremely steep first bridge and looked at the vast sea of clouds in a daze. "The blood in my chest can burn my dreams. I should have no regrets as long as my brothers are here. Side by side, we can turn the world around as one. Tribulation brothers have no regrets as long as they are alive." Suddenly, Xianyuan Changkong recited softly. This was a song that was circulated in the heavenly continent when the brothers gathered together in the past. It was a song about how they robbed their brothers back then. However, this song hadn't been recited for tens of thousands of years, because as long as they recited it, they would think of that incident back then, that person, although everyone had dreamt of it countless times in the middle of the night, and their hearts were always spinning, not forgetting the slightest detail. Who would be able to say it out loud? Who would be able to say it out loud? Xianyuan Changkong suddenly covered his face and cried out, "Boss!" His voice was like the cry of an ape deep in the mountains, and it was heart-wrenching. "Ah, boss!" Yan Fei looked up at the sky and screamed. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of blood and laughed bitterly. "You're so cruel! You're so cruel! You're so cruel! But now, you're so cruel!" And the previous curses and complaints contained a completely different meaning. "You're so cruel!" to yourself. Thinking of what Chuyang said just now, the three of them were heartbroken. The past tribulation sword masters used their bodies to open the path of reincarnation and open the door to the outer realm. Their bones were the walls, their flesh paved the way, their blood became the wind, and their souls became the sky. They sent my brothers to the outer realm to fight the extraterrestrial demons. They nurtured my brothers and reconstructed their bodies to become immortal golden bodies. They helped my brothers to become powerful in the outer realm and achieve immortal achievements. They let my brothers enjoy the glory of the heavens and the earth and receive the supreme glory. Boss, we're already fighting the extraterrestrial demons in the outer realm, but where are you? Where did you go? Boss, we're already immortal golden bodies, but what about you? We've already achieved immortal achievements, but you've left behind eternal infamy. We're already boss back then, when you cleaned up our corpses. Did your heart hurt? You must have been heartbroken. When all your brothers left, and you were the only one left, did you regret it? You must have regretted it. You didn't regret it. You knew that we'd live in hatred of you ever since. Could you really be so calm? But we've misunderstood you for so many years and scolded you for so many years. Now that we know the truth, how can we endure it? The three of them cried, unable to speak. After a long time, Xianyuan Changkong suddenly stood up and let out a long howl. His howl pierced through metal and stone and spread far and wide. Then, somewhere far away, a similar long howl suddenly rang out one after another. Xianyuan Changkong stood up suddenly with red eyes and strode into Chu Yang's room. When the door opened, Chu Yang and the other two looked at each other in shock. Xianyuan Changkong stared at Chu Yang with red eyes. For a long time, he didn't say a word. He just stared at Chu Yang. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "You said earlier that you want to pay respects to the purple firmament heavenly emperor." Chu Yang frowned and looked at him. Before he could say anything, he heard Xianyuan Changkong say heavily, "We've thought about it. We'll send you there. We'll send you there at all costs. As long as we're still breathing, you'll be safe." Xianyuan Changkong's handsome expression even had a hint of hysterical determination. "Let's set it at 10 hours later." Everyone set off. "Why?" asked Zi Xieching, puzzled. "Not long ago, you were still desperately trying to stop us with no room for negotiation. Why did you suddenly change your mind now? I'm back. I can only say that I'm so tired that I'm half dead. Not only physically tired, but also mentally that